I'd like to call today's PSC meeting to order. My name is Eli Spivak, and I will open with our standard introduction. In keeping with the Oregon Public Meetings Law, statutory land use hearing requirements, and Title 33 of the Portland City Code, the Portland Planning and Sustainability Commission is holding this meeting virtually. All members of the PSC are attending remotely, and the city has made several avenues available for the public to watch the broadcast of this meeting. The PSC is taking these steps as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need to limit in-person contact and promote social distancing. The pandemic is an emergency that threatens the public health, safety, and welfare, which requires us to meet remotely by electronic communications. Thank you all for your patience, humor, flexibility, and understanding as we manage through this difficult situation to do the city's business. And perhaps by next meeting, I'll turn this into a little ditty because we have to sing this every single time. So don't hold me to it, but if anyone wants to collaborate, let me know. I'll begin here with items of interest from commissioners. Mike.
Yeah, if anybody had any doubts about the need for— I
can't hear you yet.
What's that? Pardon?
I can hear. You're good. Keep going, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, if anybody was unclear what urban heat island is all about and the need for expanded urban forest canopy, I think the last few days may have driven that home to some folks. I'd also like to mention that Steph, Caitlin Lovell and I were on with other city staff on July 22nd testifying before we were invited testimony before the Oregon State Marine Board to basically give them a rationale for the recommendation we came up with and the amendment to the South Reach Plan. I was personally very disappointed at the lack of apparent interest and follow-up with any of the board regarding the ecological rationales that we put forward. There was virtually, Steph, you can correct me, but I don't remember one question. It was all focused on safety, which of course is important, but there's a definite lack on the Marine Board's representation, in my opinion, with regard to the negative impacts on the river's ecosystem. So I'm hoping that as we proceed, one of the things that did come out of the hearing, by the way, was a decision to expand the slow no wake zone for the entire Holgate Channel. So that was definitely a step in the right direction, but they did not take a recommendation for the slow no wake between the two bridges. But they did vote to actually look at the entire lower Willamette River. So there will be an ongoing conversation that I hope we in the city will be remain engaged in. I don't know if Steph, if you want to add anything. Okay.
Thank you. Any other items of interest? I know we have one thing for all of us is that we have the opportunity to make an appointment to DRAC. We discussed that at the last meeting. We wanted to see if anyone is interested in representing the PSC for that body, the Development Review Advisory Committee. I'll take any hands. Oh, I see a hand from Jeff, yes.
I'll reiterate what I said the last time you asked, Eli. I am interested in continuing as the representative on DRAC. I'm sort of started a new term. We're working on some new ways to organize DRAC and make it a little bit more effective, and also to try to establish a link between DRAC and the PSC. I've faulted myself in the past for not being a better liaison, but I've also challenged DRAC to make clear what they want me to bring back to this board. I mean, what are their concerns? What are some common issues? So I'd like to continue in that role as we're trying to make it a more effective relationship between DRAC and the PSC.
Okay, any other nominations or comments? All right, so this is a 3-year appointment, and I'd like to see if, well, let's do a vote. Julie, so we've got a proposal for Jeff to have his appointment renewed, and we'll do a vote.
Okay, Backrack.
Well, being the contrarian I am, I'm thinking about voting against myself, but I'll in an effort to make it unanimous, I'll vote yes.
All right. Bortolazzo.
Yes.
Hauk.
Sure.
Larcel.
Yes.
Is Oriana here? Sorry. Magnera. She's Ralph.
Yes, and thank you to Ben and Kat. It turns out we have a deep bench for this and other.
Schultz.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Feedback.
Do I hear my name?
Yes. Feedback.
And thank you, Jeff, for serving. Any other items of interest? Okay, let's go to the director's report.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you. Short report actually today. Just wanted to let everyone know that next week we bring residential infill to council for the first reading and on August 5th, and then the second reading will be the following week on August 12th. So that's a very significant, momentous moment for the Bureau and all of your work, given the many, many months and years of work that we've been working on residential infill. And also wanted to let everyone know that Nicoya Phillips has joined us as our new equity manager. And we're very excited to welcome her into that new role, a new position at BPS. As you know, she's been working in our planning team on community engagement as it relates to the comp plan. And this will be an important leadership role for her and the Bureau as we evolve that work to really evolve from kind of a singular person leading our equity work to creating a team. So she will manage a team of staff working on equity issues and working with leadership as we advance that. And we'll have more opportunities to talk about that later in the agenda. And Nicoya couldn't be with us today, but she will be joining the Planning Sustainability Commission meeting, the next one in August, presenting on the Community Involvement Committee. So you'll have an opportunity to talk with her directly then. And that's really it for today. I'm really excited that Dr. Smith is here with us today and looking forward to hearing from her. It's really been a great partnership with the Office of Equity and Human Rights, and appreciate her time and opportunity to really engage with all of you. So look forward to that conversation.
Thank you. Any questions for Andrea? All right, well, let's go now to the consent agenda. Consideration of the minutes from the July 14th, 2020 PSC meeting. Would anyone like to move that item?
Move approval?
Chris moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mike. All in favor, raise your virtual blue hand. Get us some practice. Looks like we have 6 plus me is 7, unanimous. That passes. And with that, we'll shift to our main agenda. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Markeisha, get your last name, Markeisha Smith. And are you going to start off, Markeisha?
Yes, I can.
Okay, and then Kofi Desu will also be joining this presentation on the Office of Equity and Human Rights, the Equity Toolkit briefing. And we've received that ahead of time, but we'd love to hear what you can share with us.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Andrea, for the invitation and for this group saying, yay, come on through. So excited to share with you a little bit today. I do have Dr. Kofi Desu, who is my deputy director in the Office of Equity and Human Rights, and he's here for moral support and whatever else. So you did get a chance to look at the toolkit, and I'm going to highlight some parts of the toolkit that I think will be applicable to the work that you're doing as a commission. But I wanted to start by sharing a graphic. And we've been having a lot of conversation, well, in this work, in equity work, a lot of conversation around how white supremacy culture shows up, right? And what that looks like in government structures, what that looks like in, advisory groups, bodies, commissions, right? What that looks like in our everyday life. And so this is a graphic, and I'm going to share my screen, that some people maybe have seen, but I wanted to call our attention to it again, because I think it is a good reminder for us around how we need to be thinking about. And so give me just a second here. I'm going to pull that up. I have to have so many windows open. I'm sure some of you can relate. Okay, can everyone see that okay? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, and I can probably zoom it a little bit more. I don't want to do it too much and take the words off. Sorry. Let's try that again. Okay. So what you see here really is, I think, a good illustration of the way in which this idea around white supremacy shows up. And this is not about any one individual, but I think about a collective system that all of us, no matter what your background or experience is, have been a part of. And when I mean a part of, lived through, navigated through, participated in, right, but been a part of. And so a lot of times when we think about the term white supremacy, it's the very like overt sorts of acts, right? The things that everyone would obviously say are a no-no, right? And so you see some examples of that. Hate crimes and racial slurs and, cross burnings, like these sorts of things that are very in your face, things that, are horrifying to even think about. And so we often will find ourselves in spaces where we're advocating absolutely no, right? Absolutely not. Like, this is not okay. What gets really tricky is when we look below the line. And I think this is the way. So you see the things above the line, the kinds of demonstrations of white supremacy that are overt can happen, I think, in our work. But what we see below the line is really what I think we have to be challenging ourselves around and thinking about how do these kinds of concepts and ideas influence our work, and how might they be showing up for us in ways that we don't even realize. And I think what's becoming very apparent to me in the work that we're doing across the city is a lot of this can be the barrier, can be sort of the excuse, can be the space where we just can't get past it. And so it has us hung up on ideas that a policy or a practice or a procedure just has to be. And we often can't place, like, why is it that, we can't move past this? Or why is it that, the conversation gets stifled? And what we're not understanding is that we've sort of ingested or, drank this water around white supremacy that tells us these sorts of things are socially acceptable. And so it's okay, right, if we do these things, because we don't see the overt harm that's happening, right? Where in reality, these are the sorts of things within a system that really build it into this sort of, poisoning well, right? That we're all taking sips of water from or drinks from. And so you can see some of the ideas that are there. And a lot of times, again, these are the things that get excused, or these are the things that, we talk a lot about intent versus impact. Well, I didn't mean it that way, right? Or we didn't mean to say it that way or approach it that way. And we just sort of excuse that away. And I think a lot of this, again, in our personal life shows up, but I think also we have to think about how is this showing up in the work that we're doing and the decisions that we're making as collective bodies. And so I wanted to just sort of start with this in the space, because I think, again, what happens is what is our common practice, what is our usual way of doing business, sometimes is very much steeped in white supremacy culture, and we don't even know it, right? Because it's just the way that we operate. And so how do we become more aware of the ways in which these ideas, these concepts, this is showing up, so that we can work to disrupt that, to dismantle that, and replace it with systems that are equitable, replace it with the kinds of frameworks that have us moving to a place where we are centering the voices of communities who have been historically and even are currently oppressed in our systems. And so the toolkit, kind of as a segue, I think is one such framework that has us rethink the kinds of conversations, has us rethink the way in which we are examining data, has us re-examine how we are making decisions and how we are holding not only ourselves accountable, but each other collectively accountable for making sure that we are not continuing to feed into, to contribute to systems that are foundationally built in white supremacy. So how can we collectively break this down? And so I just wanted to kind of start with that, right, as a way to jump into this work. And I'll pause there if folks have questions or comments just about this graphic or anything that I've said, and then I will go into some parts of the toolkit that I think might be useful for what you all are doing. So I'll shut up for a second and let folks, if they have things to say. So I see Oriana, I think, has her hand up.
Yeah, Oriana, yeah, and just because we're sharing the screen, I can't see everyone's faces, so thank you, Oriana, for putting your hand up. And anyone else, put your virtual hand up and we'll jump there. So Oriana.
Yeah, I'd actually like to throw a challenge down for my fellow commissioners, which is I think this graphic shows up in a lot of spaces, and then in those spaces, things kind of just blow by really quickly. I'd like us to actually go around and maybe if we're able to each identify a way that white supremacy is showing up on the commission. I think that's a meaningful way to make sure that we're understanding and kind of doing that check with ourselves, and also a way of accountably putting on the public record, identifying what, how this is showing up in our work and in our space. And I would start with just the commission structure in general is one that is exclusive in ways that make it difficult for community to access. It values technical knowledge over lived experience, and is kind of a wonky space that perhaps undervalues the experiences of things like displacement in favor of kind of more wonky code stuff. And that's not to denigrate that, but just to name that that's a way that white supremacy is showing up for me. And I think the work we're doing to figure out how to do better community integration and involvement is one way that we can counter that effectively and try to make a more equitable space that dismantles white supremacy.
And I appreciate that, Oriana. That actually is kind of the exercise that we often do with this. And here's the thing, like this shows up for white folks and people of color, right? Because again, we've all been a part of what is this system. So just putting that out there as well. So.
Well, let's take a minute. I think we should take the challenge. Does anyone else in the PSC want to volunteer some perspectives on this? Steph?
Sure. I mean, one thing that we've talked about a lot, around land use and planning generally is the paternalism of plans, and that, a lot of times plans created for communities rather than community-based plans that center those who will be most impacted by them.
I'll jump in with one. It's an English-only space, and English is hard enough to read in these technical documents, but if you're not a first speaker of the language, it makes it even more of a burden. And we have had testimony with translation, but that requires quite a bit of coordination and support for those who want to testify for whom English isn't the first language or they don't speak English at all. Yeah, we have so many non-English speakers in our community. Mike.
Yeah, I would, I guess, offer prioritizing white voices.
Yeah. Anyone else? I see Chris and then Kat.
I see one on here, not challenging racist jokes. Well, we haven't had racist jokes, but we have had racist testimony. And I know that I've struggled in that moment, whether to interject and say something, or am I respecting the First Amendment rights of the person, speaking to us. So that was a tough one.
Thank you. And Kat?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of how to succinctly maybe say this, but just the planning process itself and falling back on, you've missed the point in the process. We're not going to go back. We've gone too far. It's already been approved. It's done now, versus maybe rethinking, opening up more discussion. And just that being a part of that process, you have to be in the know. And so sometimes people find out late in the process, and it's kind of like the ship sailed a little bit. So the process itself is challenging.
Katie and then Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was kind of what Kat just said. I'm kind of agreeing with. I'll maybe just highlight a few other parts of it. It's just like if your community wants to have a plan, how do you go about getting it? It seems like if there's a council person that wants to have a certain kind of plan, it's a lot easier. Well, they're elected officials, but so how does a community go about getting a plan? And then also, if you actually get appointed to this body, if you don't have the expertise, you do need more things explained. And I think there are times when if someone was watching this body, they would hear acronyms and they wouldn't know what we were talking about. And so I think that it's sometimes, I think sometimes it would be good if we had spent more time up front when we were studying, even doing testimony. I sort of felt that way about this most recent plan. It was like, from the point of view of the person getting the document saying that their property might be changed, it seemed like it wasn't from their point of view. It was all from the point of view of why the plan had been created all the way down. And then finally it hit the property owner. Now, property owners are oftentimes aren't even BIPOC people, but it still seems like that way of organizing a plan is less approachable. That's all.
Ben?
Well, one that spoke to me particularly as a European, as a Eurocentric beauty standards, especially after having just gone through DOZA. I could see how, we apply standards that are, coming from a certain specific Western culture and maybe aren't as applicable to other kinds of culture. So perhaps be more open in that regard.
Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you. I just wanted to add, I didn't want anyone to think I was ducking this challenge, but I heard the comments that I agree with from several people just about the structure and the process that we have is often not conducive to participation by people who aren't familiar with us, by BIPOCs and anyone else who just gets a little overwhelmed by our process. So I agree with comments that several people made.
Thanks. Well, I'll close with the obvious. Portland's a very white city, and our commission is even whiter than our city right now. And that has not always been the case, and it won't be in the case in the future. But just the diversity of membership is not diverse. So, I think I'll hand it back to Dr. Maitisha. Or Ben, did you have your hand up still?
I thought I saw another hand go up.
Sometimes it's hard for us to take them hands down, so I think that's what happened.
Okay. So again, just wanted to share this and good conversation. Thank you so much, Oriana, for issuing that challenge and for folks being vulnerable in the space to really talk about how this has shown up in the structure of your commission, the way in which you've engaged with folks. I think that's really important. And the more that you can do these kinds of exercises as a body collectively, I think the better for you in really recognizing where you need to interrupt some things, where some things need to shift and change so that you are approaching the work differently. So as I said, the toolkit gives a framework to really change the way that you're approaching your discussions, your conversation, the work that you're doing, the initiatives that come to you, the projects that you are looking at. And just very quickly, background on the toolkit, it actually was an idea that was birthed out of work that was happening in our Emergency Coordination Center. One of our equity managers there, Irene Marion, who is the equity manager for PBOT, was working with the Joint Volunteer Information Center, right? And having discussions about how to basically get food and supplies into the community in the midst of what is this pandemic. And what she was noticing is that a lot of that conversation, and to no one's fault, right? Just kind of lack of having, a foundation or something to grab onto, not being accustomed to, having conversations in this way. They weren't happening with an equity framework. Like they were not, that was not the way in which the work was being centered. And she was concerned by that. And so she reached out to me and she was like, I think we really need to have a toolkit or some guidance to help folks figure this out, to give them some foundation for how to begin to engage in the work. And so with her wonderful leadership and collaboration with our Office of Equity and Human Rights and other equity managers and practitioners across the city, we developed the Equity Toolkit. And it actually became part of a resolution that was passed about a month or so ago, our Resiliency and Recovery Resolution, that now really positions my office to help think about how to hold other bureaus accountable for work. And so the toolkit being a component of that. And so that was really exciting for us as an office, and I think even bigger for the work as this is moving forward. So the toolkit itself, and I will share my screen again just very quickly. So I'm going to just kind of point some places out, and then I will take questions. So I will not spend a lot of time on going back and forth around the toolkit, because I do want folks to have the opportunity to look at it for themselves if you haven't in its entirety. And give me just a minute. I had it pulled up and now I can't find it. Okay, that happens sometimes. Let's do something different here. Bear with me, sorry. I'm toggling back and forth between a lot of screens. Okay, so let me come back to you all for a second. And here we go. Okay, so toolkit, and I'll also give this sort of caveat on the toolkit. The data that is embedded in the toolkit in its current version was as of some point in early June, late May. And so we have always thought about this toolkit as a living document, right? And so what is here, right, we know will continue to evolve and change. I think the foundation and sort of the core pieces will, remain stable in it. But I think as the work evolves and as the impact of what is happening evolves, such will the toolkit, right? So I want to put that out there. This is not it. We're always, thinking about ways to grow and adapt this work. And so I want to just kind of get down to some pieces that I think are important for you all to focus on. Just this kind of the goal piece, I think is a spot where you might want to spend some time and kind of thinking about, what this means, because I think that, and it says here that this is a working document, but at this point in time, this is where we have been led. This is the direction that we have been led. And the toolkit really was, a specific response to what is happening with COVID-19. We have always thought that the toolkit would go beyond COVID-19, and I'm always telling myself every day, we will get to the other side of this. So I'm saying that out loud in this space. Feel like you name it and claim it, right? So we'll get to the other side of this. And we want to see the toolkit really grow and expand in that way. So at this point in time, the goals that are part of the toolkit, you'll see here that there are 4, right? We've got already some values and commitments and some legal obligations that have been made by City Council as it relates to equity. And so we wanted to make sure that we really were paying homage to that, but recognizing that it's not like we're just pulling this out of thin air. Like we've had conversations and we know what we should be doing. And now it's about like taking the words that are on the paper and actually doing something with them. And I say that often, like we're really good about creating documents and even creating toolkits, but like, what do we do with that? And that's what I'm about. Like, so how are we actually going to take this and use it? So we've got a foundation. The second there is, again, around the urgent needs of populations. that are being impacted. And in this instance, are communities that are being impacted by COVID. There's another pandemic, as a member of our staff says, and that's around anti-Blackness, right? That's a pandemic too. So we've been talking really about, like, we're in the midst of two crises, right? Like COVID and, right, this other piece around anti-Black racism. So urgent needs. The third, right, how can we really encourage relief and recovery initiatives? And that right now is centered with our Emergency Coordination Center, city bureaus. And so, this toolkit really is thinking about some of those needs and establishing some expectations for what work needs to look like right now. And then the fourth is, making sure that we provide some easy access to tools and assistance. And so we want to be available to folks as they're trying to work through some of this. Okay, so just kind of highlighting that portion. The other piece, and this is just speaking to stuff that we've had before, like we have citywide racial equity goals and strategies that have been adopted by City Council in 2015. You can see the foundation of that, and much of the beginning pieces of the conversation about this toolkit really were bringing us back to the work that was done before my time, right, in this role. Wonderful work that's been done. So making sure to highlight that and elevate that in a way that folks remember and, understand the importance. I won't spend a lot of time on this, other than just to say that in the adoption of the resolution that this toolkit was included in, I think the goals there are really, really pretty clear. And this is the piece that I'm really happy that BPS, that we have been, as Andrea said, in partnership around, is around this climate piece and this equity. And what does that look like? What does climate equity look like, right? What does this look like, sort of big picture? And so this is sort of the collaboration that you'll note here. And that we've got some regular updates and some ways to check back in, right? There was a lot of community support for this, and I don't want to let community down. And so it's really important to me that, again, we take these words from the paper and we can demonstrate the ways in which they've been used, and that we can report back and say, here are some really great examples of how we are moving this work and really living into the intentions behind the toolkit. And I think, doing that in partnership with BPS is a really wonderful thing. And I've told Andrea she has agreed to be the pilot for everything. No, she's like, what, Markeisha? Yes, BPS is like the pilot for all things. So they're helping us out. We appreciate you all. So a little bit about the timeline, all of that good stuff. The guiding principles, let me roll back up a little bit, would be another place that I would say that you want to spend some time thinking about. And a lot of this, again, is information has come from other resources that we have put out into the work that we're doing as a city, but just thinking about, like, what does this mean to come from a place that is trauma-informed, healing, right, in its leadership. We're having a lot of discussions as city bureau directors around this. Equity as a priority, thinking about who is at the highest risk right now in terms of our health pandemic. How can equity decisions happen faster when we've got the folks that are expertise in the work also working with community partners? We don't often do that, right? It was like, that's part of white supremacy culture. We just talked about what expertise looks like, right, and sounds like. And so thinking about that, thinking of just being transparent with ourselves, that there are populations that are distrustful of what we put out there. I don't know if you all have experienced that in the work that you've done, right, with government just in general. And so we have to think about, how do we address those barriers? And there are some questions and considerations that help you think through that. Where do we need money to go? How will we make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable? Is really kind of 7 and 8. And 9, right? If you get stuck, we got some resources. So there you have it. So a lot of this will have changed, is based on what the Joint Volunteer Information Center was hearing about the need. I think that's, continuing to evolve, but this is where we were at the time in which we crafted this. This middle section is a lot around the data, high-risk populations. This website constantly changes, right? And so this is, as you can see, was as of May 11th, but this is constantly updated. And so you can see some real-time data there and a little bit more about populations that are most at risk here. And again, kind of connecting this to COVID specifically. We do it, obviously the ECC work is done in conjunction with Multnomah County. And so a lot of what is here was garnered from the work that they're doing. And so we were able to embed that here. Great partnership. Another example of kind of cross-jurisdictional partnership that's happening as a part of this toolkit. And then, so I'm skipping through some of the data pieces because you can go back and read that. But this is what I think will be useful for the work that you're doing. Just want to kind of, spend a couple of minutes talking about this. And so often people are like, well, it's a toolkit, there's lots of information. Is there something that I can use tomorrow, right now? I need something right in this moment. And so I think the intention in this section of the toolkit is to provide that. And so we are a member of GARE, which is the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. A lot of the equity plans and the sorts of toolkits and previous work that our Office of Equity and Human Rights has crafted has been based on guidance from GARE as a jurisdictional membership organization. And so what you'll see here in this first kind of set of 5 one-off decisions is based on GARE's information. And so these are for some quick kinds of decisions. I say quick, right? But really what I mean is like if you're kind of in the middle, and a lot of what has happened with COVID has been like we need to be thinking quickly, right? Kind of on our feet, that these work, right? Because they give you, an opportunity to think about things and sort of pivot from the usual way of doing business, but it can move you forward in a way that gets you to a place where hopefully you have a decision that is centering Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, those experiencing disparities, right, in a more efficient way, right? So kind of one-off decisions is what we've called that. And then you have the set of questions that is really more for policy, programmatic design. This is for the deeper stuff, right? The long-term kind of, we need to sustain some things and we need to change the way we're talking about it, frankly. And so we use the work of results-based accountability. That is a wonderful framework that the city has supported. We've had many bureaus that have been a part of cohorts that are learning how to use results-based accountability. But basically one of the questions that results-based accountability asks is, what are the better off measures, right? Like, how do I know that this is working for the community that it was designed to impact, designed to influence? And have they been a part of that? Okay, so that's kind of the long and short of RBA. And Kofi's on and can talk more if people have questions about that. But I think just this set of questions you can see is much deeper than the set before. And so this is really kind of that, we've got to unpack some stuff, right? Looking at number 2, historical relationships, thinking about what have been historical relationships around land use and around, right, the sorts of things that planning and sustainability has conversations about, and really have you truly unpack that with the communities? And then how have you talked about to rebuild that trust, right? That would be an example. How are you authentically engaging, right? What are some internal things that are getting in the way? You all have talked about just your structure as a body, right? Could that be getting in the way of the way in which policy, practices, procedures happen? Okay, so that's how are you evaluating what's happening? And then is whatever you're recommending or suggesting, is that either ignoring or is it ignoring something or worsening something? Are there other unintended consequences that we're not thinking about? So these are the deeper sets of questions that I think might be useful as you are moving forward in your work together. Okay. And the rest is just some things around legal obligations and resources. So I wanted to, like I said, just highlight some pieces specific to the toolkit and close my mouth. And if there are questions or comments or concerns, talk a little bit about that. And then I'll be done and let you get on with your agenda. How am I on time? I don't want to take up too much time. I think
we have time. Thanks, Dr.
Okay.
Okay. We have time for questions. Does some people like to chime in? I see Oriana.
Hey, I have two questions, but I see Katie's up, so I'll go to the end of the stack. The first is about the data piece, which is, I'm curious, Dr. Smith, what accountability and responsibility do you see city bureaus having to make sure that that data is constantly updated and that we're responsive to what data is saying? Also kind of putting the asterisks of making sure that we're collecting qualitative and lived experience in addition to some of the hard numbers.
I think that second piece is a little more difficult. We can very easily get the quantitative stuff. Well, I say easily, but I mean, those are the numbers, right? That's the kind of data that for a lot of folks, they need to see, hear, right? Engage with to really understand that there's an issue and we need to address it. I think the qualitative is where we get into like, there's a moral imperative around this, right? There are communities that are suffering. And they're suffering because of the system that, has been created and continues to be maintained. And so I think we've got to get real about how does white supremacy culture show up in data collection and the way in which we value data. And until bureaus and, kind of collectively as a city, we have that conversation, I think RBA, our results-based accountability framework, has people think about that, right? Has them really shift the way in which they are considering data that is reliable, that is, that tells the whole story. I think that's really where we've got to do some work. And I think until we can move beyond what is just numbers and really into experience, then we're going to kind of be stuck in this cycle. And folks need help to think about, what that looks like and means for the work that they do. And so, like I said, through our results-based accountability and our guidance and recommendations across the city, I think that we are having more of those conversations. We're also doing a lot more with performance measures. And Kofi has been working with our folks in our city budget office around the performance measure piece, right? And what are some things that are collective that we really all need to be making sure is showing up and that we're tracking in our work, no matter what it is, whether it's transportation or, what's happening in the city attorney's office, right? What are some things collectively that we need to be tracking? So we've got some mechanisms in place, Oriana. I think it's just bringing it all together and getting folks to understand we can't do things like we've been doing them before.
Thanks. Katie?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had any examples of places where you've really seen this work for you. And, it's always nice to hear how people have used it.
Yeah, and the toolkit specifically, Katie?
In the toolkit.
Yeah.
Specifically.
So we are seeing the toolkit's use. Two good examples with ECC work. So once we got that adopted and folks, have become more aware and more accustomed to the way in which those questions and considerations, what the intention is behind that, we're seeing that, evolve, right, in the ECC work. And I have folks from my team that work over in ECC. They're volunteering time there right now, and they are reporting back that they're seeing a difference, right, in the way in which conversations are happening. So that's one place, kind of day to day. I think the bigger example is what happened with our CARES Act funding. And so the equity toolkit had been adopted and really became without even anybody's like that. They didn't have it in front of them. We weren't like flipping through the pages as we were on the Zoom talking with one another. And Andrea was in that space with me as well with that task force. But it was just interesting how at the beginning, I think I said a few words and folks, we, just as a reminder, but that those questions were just inherently, it was coming up as we were having conversations. And even as council staff were going back and talking to our commissioners, we were seeing that happen. And I think it's not enough money. We know that. We could have that conversation all day long. But I think just the fact that we were centering our Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. Sorry, my child is running some water right now because, okay. That we're seeing that, we've seen the results of that through our CARES Act allocation. So I'm really excited about where it will go. So those are two tangible examples.
Thanks.
Oriana?
I'll let Mike go ahead and anybody else who wants to ask a question since I've already asked one.
Mike?
Okay, I was going to bring this up later today, but I think it's relevant to the conversation. We're undertaking really seriously important ecological work with the E-zone update, but there are issues regarding how much of the city is looked at from an ecological perspective. And you know from reading the background documents that there's a particular size. I can't remember. I think it's a 1/4 acre, below which there's really not much attention paid from the perspective of the environmental update, which poses an issue regarding urban heat island again. And we know from our presentation on the climate action plan and adaptation that there are large areas of the city that don't have a lot of trees, and particularly communities of color, low-income communities. And we're not addressing that through the environmental zoning, but we need to get to it at some point to address that issue. There's also the issue of a lot of good work has been going on with Metro and a lot of organizations working with Metro, mapping Oregon white oak trees. Again, we have smaller stands of oaks that we can't capture through the environmental zoning that we're involved in right now. But it turns out that in addition to being ecologically important, Oregon white oak is hugely important culturally to indigenous populations. So those are two areas that we're really not getting to through the current environmental zoning project, which is super important. We need to do that, but I think we need to also at some point, and I hope the near future, to address these other issues related to urban forest canopy and oak as two examples.
Thanks.
So some work around the toolkit, right? We've got two places that Mike has offered where this might be useful in conversations moving forward. And the other thing, and I know this, this happens with commissions, and you all have folks that come and, share, issues and concerns that are happening in their communities. And I think it's really important that, even in that space, like how is there safety created in your space, right, to be able to come and sort of share those concerns and, what might be getting in the way there. And I think you all have touched on some of that in sharing, kind of ways in which you see white supremacy culture show up in the structure. But I think that's really important that, how are we really authentically centering those voices? And that's, one of those questions or considerations as part of that toolkit. And hopefully that will help you kind of think about how to move forward. Because you're right, the tree piece is big. And I live in East County, so yeah.
I'll chime in with one question and then go to Oriana if there aren't additional ones. We talked a while ago about potential changes to the mission of this bureau in Title 30, and I don't know if that's ready to come to surface it with the Commission or City Council yet, but I just thought I'd check to see, because right now there's not anything really about being anti-racist bureau or having a focus like that, and just to make sure that it gets stuck and doesn't just become a passing thought seems important. So I don't know if you're the right person to answer this question, if you're working on it or not, but it's something that was brought up earlier, and I'm hoping it comes back to us at some point. I see Kofi's hand up, so if you'd like to jump in on this, please do.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to share that if you're not aware already, that the City Council adopted new core values for the city of Portland on June 17. And I think many people are not yet familiar with those core values. It begins with anti-racism and equity. We have anti-racism, equity, transparency, communication, collaboration, fiscal responsibility. So it is different than the previous core values that the city bureaus have used. So I've been trying to remind the bureaus to start looking at that and integrating those into their values and mission statement and the principles that they are developing for their bureaus, because those are shared values considered as a unified workplace and city culture to inform systems, policies, practices, and procedures. And Markisha worked closely with the Bureau of Human Resources to propose those values after engaging with the communities for about 1 year. And so those values came out of stakeholder engagement with communities.
Thank you, Kofi. Oriana.
Yeah. So the second question I have really focuses on who is doing the work. I think it's important to have a toolkit, but something that comes up a lot in BPS in particular is that there are not a lot of BIPOC staff, and that there are not a lot of staff who are really grounded in equity and community in the way that may be needed to do the work in this way. So I'm curious how you see applying the toolkit or additional resources that may be available to address hiring and retention, and just ensuring that community is doing the work with community, people who are connected to community, who are representative of certain communities, are actually in our bureaus, helping to build that work meaningfully.
That's a good question. And it's one that at the Bureau Directors level, we've been having a lot of conversation about, and Andrea's nodding her head. We have a smaller group of Bureau Directors that really is having some more intense conversation around, as Kofi mentioned, our city values and sort of, all these tools and, resources that we have available to us, and how do they sort of get us collectively going in a direction, in the same direction. And so one of those things around recruitment and retention has come up. There has been some conversation around mentorship, right? We have a mentorship program through our human resources, but is it a mentorship program that is specific to BIPOC staff? And is it one that is really helping to create a career pathway in a different way than kind of a traditional mentorship program would? And so we're having conversations about that. I think, another really big piece, and this is part of the core values piece, is just our work culture. So we may have BIPOC staff that come to the city, but they may not stay. And, what I'm hearing from a lot of BIPOC staff, and I actually have held, I think it's 3 or 4 spaces, Kofi, just for Black staff. And this was right after George Floyd's murder. And I've just committed to doing this monthly in conjunction with our African-American, our CAN network, our City African-American network. But what I'm hearing is that the challenges that they experience in the workplace culture is such that they leave, right? Because of, just the mental toll that it takes, the physical toll that it takes, emotional. And so how are we changing our workplace culture? And I think the values and adoption of those values is a place to start, but now we've got to live into those. And that means some people are going to be uncomfortable. And I actually like discomfort, because I feel like something's happening, right? You're going to land one way or the other. But I think in the work, right, of equity, like, you got to be uncomfortable. And so it's going to cause some people to be uncomfortable, and to recognize, like, what have you been contributing to that is, not nurturing and supportive of BIPOC staff. It's hard, right? I'll speak, and Kofi can speak too. It is hard to be a person of color working in city government, right? And I worked at the state level. I worked for Oregon Department of Ed. Difficult there, right? It is difficult. And for a myriad of reasons that, we could be on here till tomorrow talking about. But I think it's hearing that, recognizing that, how are we changing, how are we working with BHR to think about things, our policies. Sometimes we've got these policies, we talked about that get in the way. We get in the way of we trip ourselves up because we just are sort of, holding on to things that don't make sense or that are not equitable, that are not culturally responsive. So how do we have the real conversation about, let's stop doing that, right? How are we recruiting? What happens in the interview process? How are folks getting past a certain point? All of that, I think, is up for conversation, and folks are having them, right? Don't have a clear plan right now, but the conversations are happening.
Markisha, if I may add what you shared with us this morning, about how you are making sure that ethnic-based communities are being considered in the distribution of resources, but also working with the internal city employees who are people of color who have better relationships with those based communities.
Yep.
Because traditionally the city has been working with some, organizations that have big voices, they are more visible. But in this COVID-19 crisis, we have to get to the people at the base who traditionally don't have a voice. And, the people of color within the city of Portland, they know that because they live the experiences, they are connected to their communities, and they can help the bureaus do a better job in serving the community. So that means that the support to them internally is critical so that they can help the city connect with the population at the base.
Thank you. Steph, and then Mike, and then Kat, and then we probably should move on to the next item. So Steph first.
Well, first, thank you for being here, and thank you for that conversation, especially around staff. I'd love to build on that, if I may, a little bit. So like the human capacity of a lot of this work. So there's like staff, and then there's contractors and consultants, and then community partners. And I know I've worked with transportation, like Irene Marion and Carrie Waters and team have worked, done some great work on developing systems to track and support COVID certified firms. So I just want to what are we doing to ensure that also we're building community wealth and building that that capacity to ensure that COVID certified firms are built and competitive for a lot of the work beyond working with staff on that. And I guess another question also, I think we've all been in plenty of rooms where there's a lot of planners, there's a lot of community members, and it's the community members, like people with the lived experience to best drive those conversations, are the ones not getting recompensed for that value. And so I guess a question also, how are we ensuring that community partners' lived experience is being meaningfully valued? Thank you.
There has been, I can certainly answer the second piece, some conversation around, I don't know if compensation is the right word. I'm going to use it now because that's what's coming up, but just how do we value, right, or compensate for that knowledge, and not in this sort of performative way. Let me give you a Starbucks gift card, but really, really value that. And so there's some conversation happening, and I've been a part of that conversation with our Office of Civic Life, and really looking at our policies around, stipend, compensation, value, right? And so that we had brought something to City Council. All the days and weeks run together right now, before COVID, and we are, now sort of thinking about jumping back into that, because we do have, that is a major concern, right? So just to let you know, there's conversation about that.
Thank you. Mike.
Yeah, the MERP program, the Masters of Urban and Regional Planning at PSU, has been an incredibly important pipeline to city bureaus of really bright young people coming in. And I'm just wondering if you are interacting with that program at PSU, which strikes me as we're talking about expertise and trying to diversify the bureaus and the commission, of course. Whether you're interacting with PSU's MERP program, since it's such a great pipeline to the city.
Yeah, I had not. And so you have given me a resource. We have not, and definitely would be, and I don't know what, in terms of our human resources department, if they might have that connection, but I know for me, it has not been. So I thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, there are quite a few former MERPs spread throughout the city, and they may actually be good conduits to getting more interaction with that program.
Thank you.
I'm happy to make an introduction. I am one of those former MERPs. And there have been a couple others on our commission who have been snapped up by the city, so they can't stay on our commission. So it's a great program. Kat.
Been struggling with how to ask this. I think I finally have my head wrapped around. And maybe I guess one question is there something in the toolkit to help with the question I'm about to lay it out, and or is there work in progress to help committees like ours kind of figure out how to answer some of these questions? And where I'm going with this question is, perhaps some of this is the art of compromise, and then the art of maybe not fully understanding the full story and recognizing that. And so in some of our work, it's, have we gone far enough? And if we haven't gone far enough, should we just say, no, we're not going forward anymore because it's not doing enough? Sometimes we'll pass on stuff to council that's, that we'll think this is a good land use policy, but only coupled with these other things that aren't in our control. And if these things don't happen, then we wish we could kind of take it back and put it, take it out of Pandora's box kind of thing. And or concern about if it harms even one person, is that right? Right? So how to balance the needs of community, the concerns of community, and I guess trying to make sure we're doing right. But so maybe some communities of color, are getting more opportunities, while perhaps others are finding a loss of community through a land use policy, and trying to balance those, weighing how to make those decisions. So I guess I'm looking for, do you see there's some tools that kind of help work through those tough questions and could be helping us kind of figure out, and I think some of this is just maybe when to stop and say, this isn't getting at it. We need to stop moving this stuff forward without these other pieces.
Yeah, I think one part, right? Like, and being comfortable with that, right? Saying that we are going to stop a process. We're not going to move it forward because it isn't making sense and it isn't serving community in the way in which we needed to, or which was intended. I would also offer that I think the considerations or questions in the toolkit are a foundation, can help you begin to have that conversation. But just even in hearing you articulate your question, like those are the questions, right? So that's what you're having to grapple with. And so adding that, right, I said this is a living document. This is not, these are the only sets of questions that will get you, engaged in the conversation you need to be having. But I think, add that to the list of things that we need to consider. And, is this what we're doing serving one community, not serving another, right? There is a question around, what's the unintended consequence of whatever this is? And I think that's the last question of that, that second list. What are the unintended consequences? And are we having, a fully transparent conversation about that? So I think you're crafting some additional ways in which you as a collective body can have discussion. And the toolkit questions, just give you a foundation, right? That's just kind of a base to start.
Yeah, so if I may add that in the toolkit, there is a mention of the result-based accountability framework. It is a powerful framework that will help. I know the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability has already sent a cohort to the training in 2019, and they have, shown how to use a process which we call the root cause analysis to really identify the best strategies to solve a problem, to get you to where you want to be. So I think we have some expertise in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability because I think they have been leading, effectively the population result indicators that, people usually miss, to be able to tie their Bureau performance to the population results. So I think we look to the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to really help bureaus to see where they are going with their performance measures. So you have capacity in the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to use the result-based accountability framework to get you there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Smith and Kofi, not only will you guys look to us, but we're going to look to you again too, I hope. So thank you for joining our meeting today, and we'd love to have you back. And if you see us doing something that makes you think you ought to be back, just tell us. We appreciate your input here, and look forward to working with you going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time today. It was a wonderful time to talk to you all. Good way to end my day. So I appreciate it.
Well, get out there and stay cool. Thank you so much.
All righty. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Although we're going to have to stick around. So, but with that, let's transition. We're going to move over now to Andrea Durbin and Donnie to talk about the BPS 5-year racial equity plan update.
Great. Thank you very much. And Donnie Oliveira, our Deputy Director, and I will co-present. And we really appreciate the opportunity to come and just give you a snapshot of how we are implementing our 5-year racial equity plan. Just to give you a little context, in 2015, City Council directed all bureaus to develop a racial equity plan. BPS developed our plan in 2016. And that was when we had, as our equity manager, Desiree Williams-Raji was our equity manager. And so this is our kind of report on how we have done. And I'll just say, generally, the punchline is made some progress, a lot of work to do. And in fact, I think when you review and see the specific plan's goals, I think what we also have reflected on is that the focus has really shifted. In 2016, it was focused on more kind of communication and professional development opportunities and hiring and staff retention practices. Not that work has been addressed fully or isn't a priority more, but I think now, as we're talking about our racial equity goals and priorities, we are also talking about how do we center racial justice in our work? What does our work program look like? How are we engaging with community? How are we co-facilitating, co-developing these kinds of projects? So I think the work is really expanded. We want to recap for you the progress that we've made, the work that's still to be done, and then we'll kind of wrap up with next steps at the end of our presentation. So with that, I think Donnie's going to share his screen. Great. So, and this really kind of captures some of the work towards racial equity that we are trying to really operationalize and implement. And one is that we are leading with race. This means centering the needs of communities of color in our work and questioning the implications of our work on communities of color first and foremost. We're looking at intentionally engaging underserved and underrepresented populations and decisions that directly affect them. And certainly the role of the Planning and Sustainability Commission in that, and conversations we've been having about how to make the PSC more accessible and available and feeling more welcome for different communities to participate in that process is really relevant. We're working towards collaborative governance, which really means co-creation of our plans, policies, and programs with communities who are most impacted, which requires really relationship and trust building with frontline communities and an opportunity for feedback and consultation and learning in our work. Next slide. There we go. We're also looking at creating opportunities for community wealth building, and the directive that we've shared, that we've received from the City Council on looking at zoning tools for community wealth building is an opportunity to do more of that. We're really reviewing our policy decisions for their impact on different communities, identifying ways to mitigate potential harm and maximize opportunities for groups that are underserved and underrepresented, and then using an equity lens to build accountable and responsiveness with the broader community, looking to serve improving the performance of government for everyone in the city. Next slide.
Right. Hey, everyone. Great to see all of you again. It's been a while. So what I wanted to kind of capture, what we're going to walk through is we shared the 5-year plan, where Julie did with you this week, and we're really going to just touch on the goals and the 13 objectives, give a snapshot of where we're at. But I just want to note that we're going to be continuing to do a thorough evaluation of that plan and really identify and authentically go through and measure where we've fallen short on some of the listed actions and the measures, but then also highlight what's happened in 5 years and opportunities that arose that BPS took advantage of that moved us closer towards our longer term equity goals, but may not have been on the mark for what the plan outlined. We're just going to walk through some of these and then leave some time for next steps and questions. But we start with the first goal. There's 3 goals in the plan, and goal number 1 is around culture. That's really about how we elevate our work internally with each other, and it's really about how we operationalize and transform into an anti-racist culture at the Bureau. And one of the items that's really stuck with me is how do we make BPS an exceptional place for Black and Brown staff to work and thrive. And so we're looking at that. And that's really about this community building, activate creative ways to integrate transformative values into community and building activities. That's both internally and externally with our partners and other bureaus. Where we've been there, so I think there's a lot of work to be done. Dr. Smith alluded to experiences that she's heard from Black and Brown staff throughout the city. We've also had similar experiences at BPS where staff left maybe a little earlier than anticipated because they weren't feeling safe or they were able to thrive. And so in a short time that I've been at BPS and working with Andrea and our colleagues, we've been identifying the ways that we can address those issues in real time to create those safe spaces for our colleagues.
And then the next one is really looking at creating more communication channels and really better understanding how do we become an anti-racist culture and fostering more collaboration and continuous learning. I would say, characterize this as kind of in process. We've made more recent progress in trying to create a more of a learning culture, but this is work that really we have a lot of room for improvement. The ways in which we're tackling it now is we're trying to build into our staff meetings opportunities to share lessons learned, both kind of successes, but also the mistakes and places where we can really reflect and learn, and how do we improve the work and share those lessons with all of our staff, and create a more safety around taking risks and making mistakes in our work. We are also, one area that we need to do more is building that into our team meetings for opportunities to really reflect, analyze, and learn. We're looking to how to kind of improve communication channels so that there's more information and transparency to decision-making and more opportunities for more staff across the Bureau, especially our BIPOC staff, to really participate in the transformational work that we're tackling. So, this is all kind of in process. It's clearly a key priority for us as we advance this plan.
All right, 1C under culture is activate creative ways to integrate the transformative values into community building activities. And I think the interesting part about this one is its ability for us to provide training, professional development. It's also the one that we've had the most success in terms of providing a lot of opportunities for staff, both white and BIPOC staff, to have access to equity trainings, a range of trainings around like the RBA that Dr. Smith mentioned, but also it's still a place where we have a lot of work to do because we're not seeing the transformative culture as a result of those trainings. So where can we lean in more? Where can we take advantage of the trainings we know are impacting our colleagues in a positive way, and what are not actually helping us advance this work? The other thing is we also been putting a lot of resources into anti-racist management culture, where we're working with our managers to ensure that they're creating safe space and culture within their teams to ensure that our BIPOC staff want to continue working at BPS.
1D is to reinforce BPS values and integrate equity into our work through monitoring and evaluation. And really, this is all about accountability. And I would characterize this as one of the biggest shortfalls to date in advancing this plan. We are really looking at how to build in more accountability in implementation of these values and shifts that we want to see in the workplace and in our work. We're looking at one way to do that is building that into our performance evaluation systems, holding managers accountable to integrating racial equity into our work and tying that to their evaluation and their compensation. We have made it clear that it's everyone's job and responsibility. We have invested a lot in training. People are well trained. There are lots of tools that we've made available, and now it is we've kind of set the expectations that it's time for people to really step up and lead in this work and lean in. I think the PSC, Kat, your question to Dr. Smith, I think is absolutely spot on. I think the PSC really plays a role in this, in that as you create and set expectations, that you don't want to see projects unless they are clear about how we've addressed and reconciled kind of the questions around how do we advance racial equity and look at opportunities to engage with communities and how we have worked with an integrated community into the work. It's, that is one place where we can improve accountability, is by setting that expectation and regular performance in presentations to PSC for our project work. So I think your role, you will play a role in this accountability system as well.
All right, shifting gears to the long-term goal number 2 around people, which is diverse staff at all levels of the Bureau who reflect the demographic future of Portland. 2A is arguably our most successful objective. We've have successfully launched an internship program with a really robust, thoughtful focus on working with and hiring BIPOC students and young professionals. We have taken advantage of the MERT program, and we annually have at least 2 or 3 different BIPOC planners from PSU that are joining us. We've even worked with other groups such as PULF to place internships with them, like funded by us. So we have a pretty robust internship program that has a thoughtful recruitment program. So we're pretty excited to keep that going. Actually, I want to acknowledge that our new equity manager had an integral role in really expanding the reach of that program, the internship program.
Great. Goal 2, people at 2B is update BPS's hiring practices to incorporate equity and ensure consistency in use. This is a place where we've made a lot of progress, and credit goes to our people services team. They've done a great job of developing new hiring toolkits and practices for having more inclusive processes that are not tokenized, and making sure that we are implementing that for our open positions. We've made progress in hiring staff of color. Right now, 34% of BPS staff are staff of color. Where we really have a lot of work to do is in retention. As Donnie noted, we have seen turnover, and as Dr. Smith noted and reflected on her experience and what she's hearing from staff of color across the city, we need to do a better job of creating safe, inclusive environments, and where people have opportunities to grow, opportunities to be themselves, and do their work. And that is, I think, really the priority in the other half of this work.
Right. 2C is the new employees and interns have the tools to feel connected and be successful. I'd say there's been progress made, and we've identified the tools that we should be using to meet the goals that were outlined in our racial equity plan, the objective set. However, how those are consistently implemented it varies by program and by manager. So we have work to do on accountability with our managers, which is probably going to be a theme of all of this. But in short, that we've realized there's even more to do. And this is an example of a goal, short-term objective that we think we could do more as a Bureau. And since this plan was made, we've actually, I think, gone above and beyond some of the standards that were outlined in the racial equity plan, and yet our consistency is still falling short.
This one, 2D, all staff have opportunities for formal and informal professional development. I think would characterize this as also inconsistent implementation. We have provided those opportunities for some staff, but not across the board, and don't have a good sense of the different level of professional development opportunities that our BIPOC staff would like. The way we are addressing that now is we are building that into our new performance evaluation system, which is moving to quarterly check-ins between managers and staff. And managers will be required to have those conversations and really establish a better understanding of what kind of professional development their staff would like to see. And then we will be having conversations about how we can meet those requests and needs.
Right. So goal 3 is about the work. So this goal has 5 objectives. And it's really about the measurable equity results for communities of color, low-income populations, and other underserved and underrepresented communities. Starting with 3A, it's interesting. This is sort of ahead of its time regarding our conversations around anti-displacement with the residential info project and better housing by design, but it was ultimately around can we develop a citywide approach to addressing community development and addressing displacement from gentrification. We've seen snapshots in smaller projects, whether it be the Southwest Equitable Housing Strategy that was released in 2018, the work we're doing in the West Portland Town Center. There's snapshots of this, but we haven't had that fully robust system built out until we hope to see the anti-displacement task force that's being stood up this summer to play a role in helping us shape that. As far as a community development perspective, again, there's still opportunities and much work to be done to collaborate with our partner bureaus on that.
3B, build sustainable relationships and trust with communities of color and underserved and underrepresented groups. Here we've made a lot of progress as well. In 2018, we created our full-time community engagement specialist position. That was Nicoya Phillips' previous position. And so that's been a really core position to provide added capacity and support to and advice for our and in this case, planning staff to integrate and work closely with communities and get their input in to help shape projects. We launched the community involvement committee, and which is advising us on how to engage with communities. And the Planning Sustainability Commission will have an opportunity to hear more about that work at our next meeting, and also have a conversation about how do we better connect between the PSC and the Community Involvement Committee. So look forward to that conversation. We're launching now new work that is really intended to make the shift to be co-creating with community in 2 specific areas. One, our anti-displacement task force, which we'll also share more and report back to the PSC about at our next meeting. And then the climate justice initiative that was part of the climate emergency declaration. And we will be launching both efforts this fall. And then we're with the shift from moving from a single equity manager to an equity team. Part of that incorporates a new position that will be focused on community engagement across the Bureau. And so one of our goals is to really create a more bureau-wide approach to working with communities and making sure that we are coordinating internally and also not adding to pressures and burdens and asks of community members, and finding the best ways to really support and engage and bring in our community partners.
3C is the metrics monitoring and evaluation objective, and this is also probably underperforming or incomplete. In some ways, we've actually bootstrapped some of this work in terms of developing our systems for tracking more like thoughtful equity measures, whether it be in our climate or planning work. And at the same time, we just haven't resourced that work in a meaningful, thoughtful way to actually sustain it. So it's typically we're patchworking some of the processes to get by. I think this is a place that we'll be looking into the future, how we resource this more thoughtfully, because it's sort of foundational to understanding not just the quantitative, but the qualitative impacts of our work. And that's oftentimes that's year over year. It takes time to see the true impacts of some of the plans we're developing. So definitely place for growth and further activation.
3D, practices and tools that integrate equity at all phases. This is also in progress. We've made some efforts here, but have not operationalized it across the Bureau. We've really integrated in projects here and there. We have developed tools and guidance, and the next phase of that is really to determine the best way to operationalize that and create internal community support and staff support for our projects. But several projects have applied community engagement, including our streetcar land use study, shelter to housing continuum, and the EV code project, which is coming up.
And then last, the internal collaboration objective, which is really about a collaborative structure to support equity implementation in our projects. This has been pretty spotty across the Bureau. There's some teams that have really internalized and centered racial equity in all the work they do. So from front-loading community engagement to back-end measurement and evaluation, and others are sort of piecemealing still. So we haven't really built out that bureau-wide strategy or structure to support that. We're seeing, obviously with the staffing up of an equity team that's going to be supported, and with resourcing that's going to continue to provide resources. But again, this is an area where the Bureau has quite a bit of work to do to meet the intent of this objective. So that wraps up the quick review, and I wanted to take a moment to sort of reflect on why we're bringing this to you right now versus 6 months from now or so when we have more data to share. And to be frank, the reason is that we are, as a Bureau, very thoroughly evaluating structural, procedural policies, work plans that are reshaping how BPS is going to be doing the work. And before we got into a scenario, we were sharing the next version of our racial equity plan. It felt appropriate to take a stock take on where we've been for the past 5 years, and be frankly candid with you that we have fallen short, I think, of the big picture, but largely the commitments there still to really activate the plan as it is and advance it to the 2020 version, which we're actively working with our colleagues, both white and BIPOC staff in BPS and with our partners like at OHR and others. So I just want to kind of provide that context of why now, given just the zeitgeist of what's going on around us, following the murder of George Floyd, and also just the passion that we've seen in the city with our residents showing up in Black Lives Matter support. There's also a moment of disruption that we want to take advantage of to say, if not now, when? And this felt like the right time to check in with you all as well.
Thank you so much for sharing, Andrea and Donnie. So we have a few minutes for questions. If you have one, raise your hand. I'm going to toss one out because I'll take your invitation. Why do this now? One possibility might be I know that in the coming 6 months, there's already been some juggling to get projects with the greatest opportunity to further racial equity goals to commission quicker, like the Housing Continuum Project. I'd be interested in seeing staff's recommendation going 6 months to 2 years out. What might be some appropriate shuffles in project timelines or resources to further these goals sooner rather than later? And so one idea might be for staff to have their own suggestions on how they might do some triage. And we could review that, and we could even get public testimony from communities most affected to get their take on it as well. So I'll just drop that as an idea, but I'll pass the baton over to Steph and then to Oriana for questions.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You're describing a lot of work, and it's great to have Nicoya Phillips as a person who's going to be building on that. She is one FTE. I'm curious, what is the current FTE of BPS, and how many FTE, by your estimation, name equity as a core part of their work? And I'll say, because I've been in a lot of spaces where it's everyone's job. It also becomes then under resourced and understaffed, and becomes really burdened onto a very few people. Thank you.
Should we take? Okay.
I was just going to say, so Nicoya will have 2 direct reports. So the equity team, the Bureau-wide equity team, will be a staff of 3, which is new for this fiscal year. So that's a shift. I'd also say there's about 6 staff that legitimately within their work plan, soup to nuts, everything they work on is equity centered. We have a waste equity coordinator. We have a smart cities equity focused project, and 2 of those staff are working on that. Our climate justice work has really been reallocated and pivoted to be centering on racial equity as well. And then there's staff that are working on projects that we are really thoughtfully centering frontline communities and BIPOC communities as setting their priorities as ours. Having said that, we are still very much in the work plan development of really shaping the next phase of BPS's work plans. And it's actually happening in real time, like today and yesterday and tomorrow. It'll continue to be that way. This is very much a bureau that's evaluating all that we're doing, procedures, programs, and policies about what's next, and how we're really truly showing up authentically in a racial justice program framework.
Yeah, I would just add, Steph, to your concern, I completely hear and agree with you that if you make it everybody's job, then it's nobody's job, and nobody's responsible. And I think the way that we're addressing that is to, as we look at kind of what are the next set of priorities that we want to tackle and the priorities we want to carry over that we haven't really made progress on, making it clear who is accountable for making sure that this happens. And I think that was a missing piece of the last plan.
Okay, I'm Oriana, and then Ben, and then if this is a big conversation, so if we need to block out time at a future meeting, that'd be totally appropriate, I think. Oriana.
So this may be maybe a little bit of a rewording of Steph's question. So apologies, Steph, if that's how it lands. But looking through all of these action items and starting with the statement about leading with racial justice, from the perspective I've seen on the commission, it feels like a lot of this isn't happening in a meaningful way. And I don't think that's on you, Andrea, or on you, Donnie. You're doing very good work right now to kind of write things and get back on track, but I'm curious where the accountability for this document lives. And I would be very concerned if the answer is in the equity manager, but where is like the accountability within leadership, and how can we ensure as a commission that this work is moving forward, while also recognizing as an all-white commission that we may not be the right people to hold any accountability around this. So I'm just thinking out loud a little bit, but just really grappling with that idea. Like, Eli, when you name, staff coming up with something and then the PSC checking it, I have a lot of discomfort as a white person checking something that BIPOC staff who are doing the work have said through my lens as a white expert, which, if you remember that diagram, is part of kind of the covert white supremacy that shows up. So I want to make sure that there's internal accountability, maybe managing up a little bit, and then that community accountability as well, to ensure that this is happening and that it's being checked in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I would say absolutely agree with you that really it's leadership is accountable. I think one of the points that we have made clear with Nicoya and staff is that it's not Nicoya's responsibility. It's not our equity manager's responsibility to achieve our equity plan. It is leadership's responsibility to achieve our equity plan. And that is why we're kind of looking for ways to take kind of the commitments and figure out how do we actually advance them? How do we operationalize them? How do we build into our systems the kind of change that we need to see to make this to go from kind of intentions to action?
I'll also add, Oriana, thank you for flagging that as about the project you're seeing, that we are very thoughtfully slowing down our work plan systems to really evaluate, like, when we're saying that we're going to apply equity lens, is that genuine, or is that us just sort of box checking to move a project along? And if it's not genuine, why are we doing it? So this is actually a conversation that happened this morning. Again, these are very crucial conversations that are happening. And the accountability, frankly, lies with a lot of our program managers and how we're actually showing up for our staff and getting that feedback on what is the priorities. And when they're listening to community, we're out in the field and we're getting direct interactions with our community for what their priorities are. How are we internalizing that and actually turning that around into meaningful projects, and not just saying, yes, that's a box check for us. We did the outreach. Let's continue on the pathway we started. So, and that's a culture change. That's not just, work plan shift. That's really shaping the way we do work in a very different way than the Bureau's been doing it for probably since its inception.
All right, I'm going to jump in too for a second. I think sometimes I have a frustration that projects that come to us don't have a lot of opportunity, don't have a lot of potential within them to further some of the goals that are in this charter. And so faced with that, I'm hopeful that staff has relations with communities to rejigger that so it comes to us. But if they keep coming to the PSC that way, then I think that we might have a role in soliciting input from those who are more representative than we are to revisit that. And so that was the genesis of my idea. It wasn't for us just to do it on our own. So anyway, good food for thought. I'm going to go to Ben for a second.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring some emphasis on something that Andrea said that caught my attention, and I was really glad to hear, actually, when talking about culture. And it was something to the effect of creating an environment that provides some safety and taking some risks and making mistakes in our own, as we conduct our own work. And I think that's a very key issue, because when we talk about, equity goals and strategies, I don't think there is a silver bullet. I don't think this is very much a learning process. And I think an environment like that allows for a good, healthy dialogue and look at a different viewpoints, not only challenging the system, but also looking at what the opportunities are. And I think creating an environment where we can make mistakes, we can have differing opinions and different views is really, really key to move forward.
Thank you, Ben. Good point. Well, I'm going to take this opportunity to transition topics, but not transition our focus to a new project that's in front of us, which is the E-Zones project. And I know we have many people ready to testify for us now, so I'd like to invite Mindy Brooks and Daniel Sobbing. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your last name right. You can correct me, please. To give a short overview of the presentation of this project. Oriana, is your hand up still? I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it's actually part of the transition. So if you want to finish kind of introducing, I'll ask my question to leadership and Mindy.
Okay. So Mindy can give us an introduction, then we'll do our PSC disclosures if there are any, and then go to testimony. So Mindy, please.
Oriana, did you want to go before I do my presentation?
No, I'll wait until after. I think it will be appropriate to ask then.
Okay, great. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully. Okay. So thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. And as Eli said, we're going to be doing a short presentation here on the Environmental Overlay Zone Map Correction Project. And then we have a couple of invited speakers, and then we hope to open it up for public testimony and then discussion with the commissioners. So a reminder about the project purpose and scope. This project is about protecting the remaining natural resources in Portland in a consistent and appropriate way by correcting the overlay zones to align with existing natural resources. This is needed because streams and wetlands provide flood storage and allow movement of water, reducing risk to homes and infrastructure from flooding and erosion. Trees on steep slopes hold the soil in place and reduce the risk of landslides. And existing tree canopy maintains cooler air temperatures. And also Portland is not only home to people, but also birds, fish, and wildlife. So we've received a lot of phone calls and emails over the past month, and I wanted to address one of the main things that we've heard. And the concern is, does this mean I have to tear down my house or that I can't maintain my house? The answer is no. Your existing house, deck, driveway, parking area, yard, or fence can remain right where it is. It can be maintained and repaired, and in most cases replaced within its current footprint. Also, within an existing yard, the lawn can become garden, the garden can become lawn, play equipment can be added. The overlay zones are about limiting new development and new disturbances that would further impact the natural resources. As we've said, the E-zones are about correcting the existing natural resources, protecting the existing natural resources. This is a map of where those existing resources are located. The dark green is forest, and you'll notice that the resources are not equitably distributed. There are more forests in the hills and outer Johnson Creek, and there's a lack of existing resources in the middle and eastern portions of the city. As was mentioned at the briefing, this is because people have removed the trees and buried streams and wetlands to make way for development. So there's little resource left to protect. Most people of color in Portland live in East and Northeast Portland. They experience the effect of fewer natural resources, such as heat islands that we're experiencing a lot of right now. Unfortunately, the E-zones are not a tool that can address the inequitable distribution of resources. E-zones can only be used to protect the remaining resources. Other programs, which Urban Forestry and BES will talk about, focus on restoring trees and improving floodplains. This project was not scoped to advance equity. However, it is critical to protect existing resources in a consistent way. It is much more efficient and less expensive to protect the remaining streams, wetlands, and tree canopy than to replace natural infrastructure with pipes or repair homes and streets after a flood or landslide. And the existing resources are critical to being resilient to climate change. This is the documents that are before you and the subject of the hearing this evening. Everything is available on our project website for review and download. People can also look up the specific proposal for their property through the eZone map. Because this project impacts roughly 17,000 properties, there's been a lot of public notice and engagement leading up to the proposal. Impacted property owners have received 3 mailings from us over the past 2 years and have been invited to multiple meetings and events to learn about the project. But the biggest effort that is still ongoing are site visits. To date, we have gone on 400 site visits, over 400 site visits, and we have scheduled dozens more throughout the summer and the fall. And at these site visits, we verify the location of the natural resources, where the streams and trees are. And after we confirm that, we adjust the overlay zones to match the resources. Here's a summary of the written testimony as of 3 p.m. today. We've received 177 pieces of written testimony. The topics are listed here in order of how much testimony we've received on each subject. The vast majority of testimony, over 70%, believe that features on their site are mapped incorrectly, and staff will be replying to all of these testifiers to schedule a site visit to verify the feature. The other big topics were property value, development potential, and support for the project and the overlay zones. I do want to point out we've received a few pieces of testimony about the B or the buffer overlay zone. There are no changes to the B overlay zone proposed with this project. This project is only changing the conservation, protection, and scenic overlay zones. As we discussed at the briefing, it's important to conduct site visits and then allow people a chance to testify. With the schedule, we are recommending a continuation, and I'm going to turn it back over to Eli here. We'll come back to this slide after we hear from testimony. So Eli, I'll turn it back over to you now. You're muted.
Thank you, Mindy, for the reminder. Let's use this chance. Oriana, do you want to chime in with the question?
Yeah, so I want to bring forward a conversation we've been having in kind of the officers meeting space preparing for these meetings. And that's the question of kind of that transition. It still feels like a really hard transition to go from talking about racial justice to talking about a project that is not leading with race. And I don't know that it was designed in that way. So I think the first question I have is like, why is this project happening? And who is it intended to benefit? And then the second question, the one we're grappling with about not moving too fast, is how can we as a commission, or how can this project that is kind of baked already take a step back and reframe or integrate on the racial justice end? And then the second aspect of that question has to do with the property value side, which is, I think, an easy place I could see and am interested in, is how this map interacts with displacement and what the risks are associated with changing the zoning to impacting communities that have already been impacted by displacement, or making other neighborhoods with property values that go up further inaccessible.
Mindy, do you want to take that now? Or
I need to respond now to those questions.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Your volume is quite low.
Do you want me to respond now to those questions?
I think if it's maybe a short response now, and then we can come back to it when we do a go round at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. So why the project? The project is implementation of the 2035 Comprehensive Plan, which calls for the city to maintain our environmental programs and to keep them up to date. When we adopted the 2012 Natural Resources Inventory as factual basis for the comp plan, it identified the fact that we are not protecting our natural resources in a consistent way. We have over 180 streams that were mapped, that were not mapped previously, and therefore are not protected consistently across Portland. And so this is a specific project to implement the comprehensive plan. It's the first step or a phase in the project because the environmental overlay zones are narrowly focused on protecting existing resources where they are now. It's not about advancing or improving natural resource conditions. Who benefits from this? Portland benefits from this because this is about keeping our natural infrastructure functioning and reducing the cost and burden of added gray infrastructure, risks of flooding and landslide, and of keeping the air cool. There are also a myriad of benefits or impacts to individual private property owners who either benefit from the tree canopy staying on their property or protecting the landslides, or may have additional regulations that limit how they can use their property. I will not answer right now that question about reframing. I think that's probably a commission question that you guys should discuss. We did look at displacement early on in this and who was impacted by the regulations. The majority of the natural resources, as I showed in that map, are in areas that are primarily white and wealthy in Portland. And the impact is largely in that area and not in high risk areas where people are vulnerable, with the exception of a few places. And we can dig into those places with you and get a little more specific next time for sure.
Thank you. So I see Jeff and Mike with their hands up. So let's go Jeff first and then Mike, and then I'll ask, we will have a chance to do a go round at the end of this, and we have 35 people ready to testify. So let's keep this part as short as we can, and we'll have a chance to talk more later. But still, let's do it. Jeff?
Okay. First off, I've got major concerns about this project on a number of levels, but picking up on Oriana's comment, we had our first briefing on this 2 weeks ago. It's somewhat unfortunate we didn't have a briefing at the very start, so the very concerns Oriana's raising could have been raised at that point. There are many projects we could do to implement the comprehensive plan amendments we made. So again, the question is why this one? Is this the right allocation of resources when we have not just now our new racial concerns and concerns about displacement, but all along, there are many things we could tackle. So I think that's unfortunate that at the start of this project, we didn't have that conversation. And I just want to voice two concerns I've got going forward before the public testifies. One is picking up on Katie's comment that she made earlier today about this project doesn't feel like we're viewing it from the lens of the affected people. And I think that's very true. It feels like we're trying to justify imposing new regulations on a property by property basis, rather than turning it around and saying, what's the impact on these property owners? And as evidenced by the letters we've received, there's quite a bit of concern about the impact. This is different than a broad-based zone where we take residential infill and we're imposing it on a large number of properties for a clear policy reason. This is different. This is going to each individual property and saying, we're going to enhance the regulations on your property as a corrective measure. So it's very site-specific. And I'll come back to that after we've heard the public testimony. But I want to make one other comment. And Mindy, this is not, don't feel criticized by this. But you said at one point we've received some important questions, repeated questions from property owners. And one of the ones I've heard is, can I replace my house if it burns down or I want to replace it? And the answer we heard tonight was, in most cases, yes. Well, that's a pretty disconcerting answer if you're worried about your house and you're being told by the government, well, in most cases, we'll let you replace it. That's going to leave you wondering with a lot of questions. And I think that's just indicative of the way we've approached it, not from the property owner's perspective, but from the government knowing what the best thing is to do. And so I'll follow up on a lot of these concerns afterwards, but my concerns both go to the technical aspects. I think there's a lot with this project that begs some questions about equity, fairness, and legality, but I'll come back to those. But I just kind of want to set the stage for where this project's going and agree with some things Katie and Oriana have been saying. So
I'll go to Jeff and then Mike, and I would ask the commission to indulge to move to public testimony. Jeff.
I just finished.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was jumping right. I'm reading the wrong side of my screen. Mike.
Okay. I'm just hoping you heard me. Now I heard everything to make sure I wasn't muted the whole time.
Well, this could be a very long conversation, so I'll just make it quick. We have all sorts of policies through the comp plan and a huge amount of work that's been done over the last 15 or 20 years, in which the city, the citizens of the city have said they want to maintain quality of life, they want to maintain ecological integrity of the city as it grows. We have a plethora of policies that say we should be doing this. What we're doing right now is simply correcting mapping errors by utilizing more refined technology. And protecting these remaining natural areas is part and parcel to addressing the climate action plan, climate preparation. I did point out, we're talking about the large landscape here, and I would agree, as I said earlier, that we also need to look at a more refined look, at a finer scale look, to truly address issues that impact low-income communities and people of color, specifically the urban forest canopy and urban heat island and some of the cultural resources. This is about protecting the city's environment as we grow, which benefits everybody.
But Mike, just to make clear, this is a very narrowly focused project, and it's controlled by state law to a large extent. So it really doesn't get at the broader environmental issues you're concerned about and have brought up so eloquently many times. This is far narrower. This is not going after overall tree canopies, overall clean air. There's a very narrow list of resources, as you know, that State Goal 5 allows to be addressed as part of this project. So I think it's important that we distinguish between the narrow focus of this versus the broader environmental concerns you brought up that we do need to address.
Well, I actually beg to differ in that this is a refinement of a project that's been ongoing for some time, which in fact is the broader view of the environment within the city.
So I'm going to interject here.
Mike and I can go all night if you'll let us.
And now we will listen to the public. So I would like to, I do not believe that there are any Psc disclosures related to this project to be made. So if I'm wrong, raise your hand. Okay, so we have no disclosures. And I would like to open up the public hearing right now. And I'll adjust my screen here so I can see everybody, I hope. So we're going to start off, and we're going to, once we get through our invited testimony, we're going to have 1.5 minutes per person. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and for joining us in this meeting. We'll begin with Daniel Newberry from the Urban Forestry Commission, and then go to Marie Walkiewicz with BES. So Daniel, can you try seeing if this works?
Okay, thank you, Eli. Just want to confirm you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you. The Urban Forestry Commission had a similar briefing from Mindy Brooks recently, and we've discussed this project, and we support this project. But, you know, since you've been talking about equity here, I think it's important to mention that this comes up in most BPS projects that we look at as an Urban Forestry Commission, in that there never seems to be really an opportunity to advance equity. And that's because these projects are so carefully circumscribed in terms of what the project is meant to do and what it isn't going to do. And in particular, in this particular project, I know you probably can't do anything about it, but what was raised was how there are certain resources, especially in East Portland, where there are so few natural resources, that really could use the same kind of protections that E-zones are meant to provide, like addressing remnant Douglas fir tree groves in East Portland, also looking at preserving Oregon white oak, even down to individual trees. Obviously, the way this project is defined, it makes it very difficult, but we would like to just pass along to this commission, to pass along to BPS, that in the future, as you do these projects, really think early on, coming to the Urban Forestry Commission earlier, so we can really help you address in a scoping capacity to get these equity issues addressed. Because one of our really big issues is this unequal forest canopy across neighborhoods, according to, you know, in many cases where neighborhoods were formerly redlined, and where you see today there's a big correlation between a lack of canopy. So that's one of the big things we would like to get across today to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Marie, are you there? Welcome to the PSC.
Eli, I believe Marie is not with us. She's having technical difficulties. So they have BES has provided written testimony and would ask that everyone just take a look at that.
Okay, thank you. And just as a question, I saw written testimony from the Portland Water Bureau too. Is that, I'm guessing they're not speaking here, or?
There's testimony from the Water Bureau, and there will be written testimony from Parks that comes in as well, but they did not opt into being invited speakers.
Okay, well, thank you. Then let's move to public testimony. We'll have 1.5 minutes each. Please introduce yourself as you begin, and we'll be patient with technology. I'll be the timekeeper, and I'll put my hand up when we get to 1 minute, 15 seconds. So you don't have to stop right then, but that's the time to start.
Eli, can I ask a question? Can you hear me? Can I ask a question?
Yes, thanks.
Can we question the people testifying? Are we interactive enough to do that? Or are you?
We have the technology to do it. I will ask Julie to give me an update on how many people are testifying. So I would say, if you feel it's essential, then raise a hand.
I'll try not to. May I ask Daniel a question if he's still listening in from the
Sure.
Forestry? Daniel, can you hear me? I guess we lost him.
Yes, I can. Okay. I'm unmuted now.
Oh, okay. Here's my question. By expanding the E-zone, as this project does, one of the rationales for many properties is to protect more trees. I'm wondering if you can give me any insight into what additional protection that's going to provide beyond what the code, Title 33 and Title 11 that you guys manage would do. What's not there in Title 11 and Title 33 that would be added by putting an E-zone or an EP zone on a property? What additional tree protections would that provide?
Okay, good question. I can't address the Title 33 as much as you can, but in terms of Title 11, Title 11 is not so much a title that actually allows you to protect trees. It just makes it very expensive to cut them down in a lot of cases. It all depends on whether it's things like development situation, non-development situation. But if you look at a lot of cases in Title 11, you can cut the trees down. You just have to pay to do it. It would be good to look at. It's tough because like you mentioned earlier, you got to balance private property rights with the rights of the greater community. So this comes up all the time. When we have hearings with people, can you cut down trees? Can you not? It all depends, and sometimes it's just very expensive to cut them down, but you can cut them down. I don't know what the answer is.
Thank you. Well, as we hear testimony, there will be items where we'll wonder, what's the follow-up? And we know the staff has looked at we will plan to continue this hearing. And in the interim, staff will have a chance to follow up with people who have individual questions about their specific properties and even do site visits. They will do that on request. So some of these items I think will be resolved between this and the next hearing. And Mike, I'm going to have to get to public comment because people have been waiting a while. Did I say something incorrect? You can correct me. Okay.
No, I was just simply going to say, Jeff asked a question that Daniel couldn't answer, and I thought Mindy might be able to respond to it since the question was posed.
I can, but would you like me to hold it till after public testimony? I can make a note and come back.
I'd like to wait till after. I think people have been waiting. I'd like to jump to it if that's all right.
That's fine. I just want to make sure the information gets out.
Sounds good.
Since the question was asked.
Sounds good. Thank you thanks. Let's go to Adriana Swissa. Are you able to join us? I saw a note from, okay.
Yeah, Eli, please look in the list of attendees, those who are
order.
numbered in order. So
Chris, Ged, my screen's not letting me see your whole last name. It starts with a G-E-D.
Gedrose.
Thank you, Chris. Okay.
So I don't know how to turn on my video if I need to.
If you don't need to.
No need, and you're not able to actually in your.
Okay, so my comments have to do with the project, the criteria used to create the zone boundaries. I own a home and an adjacent vacant lot in the Southwest Hills of Portland, which are at the very, very edge of the C-zone boundary. The house was built in 1955. It was one of the very first homes on the street. It was built as part of the Hessler Hills development, if you know where that is, at the end of Westwood Lane. The adjoining lot was never developed, and I purchased it really as a retirement project. Obviously, the local environment was a huge part of why we purchased the home and something that my whole family treasures. But I believe that the boundary of the C-zone was drawn incorrectly on the 1991 plan, and that mistake is being continued with this plan revision. My lot has, on two sides is streets, and on the other two sides are single-family homes. So it's contained. It's not part of a larger open space. And when I look at the 1983 Terwilliger plan, which is, oh man, you gotta be kidding me. Okay, so when I look at the 83 Terwilliger plan, which you should all look at because that's the grandfather of what we're doing right now, it stopped at Northwood, which was the street on the bottom of our property. And in the 91 plan, that creeped up. And I was told by your staff, the sole criteria was the tree canopy. And we've been good stewards of our trees. Now they're bigger. So we're more impacted by this, which is just crazy. And I've got this lot that I want to develop, and you're putting all of these criteria on it, and you're putting an enormous cost to develop that. This is a lot that's within 5 miles of downtown. It's what you want. It's where you want the housing to be.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to thank you very much for testifying, and this is a great chance to talk to staff afterwards, if you'd like. In addition.
Yeah, well, they're telling me, that's the problem, is they're telling me the only criteria they're using is the tree canopy. When I look at the resource site boundaries, there's 2 or 3 other criteria that they should be putting on it, but they're not.
Well, thank you very much.
And that's straight from Mindy. I've got emails from Mindy saying the only criteria we're going to use is the tree canopy.
Thank you. Next up, we have Bob Salinger.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Salinger. I'm the Conservation Director for the Portland Audubon Society. Appreciate the opportunity to testify today. We are strong proponents of this project, and we really appreciate the work that BPS is doing. The environmental zones are a critical part of protecting our urban landscape, both the ecology, but also our communities, because this is how we have clean air, clean water, and deal with things like urban heat island. It's a critical part of the tools we have to address climate change and build resilient landscapes and equitable landscapes as well. I would note that this has been in the works for decades. Since the early 90s, this has gone through multiple rounds of review. And what we're doing here simply today is updating the maps to make sure they're accurate. This is a common sense process to make sure that the maps actually align with where the resources are. We're not changing policy here. We're simply making sure the maps are accurate. And we think it's an incredibly important process to go through. There's time to deal with policy down the road, but for the policies we have now, we ought to have accurate maps. We appreciate the responsiveness of staff to the community. We've worked with staff on this process and found them very responsive. Our comments today, we submitted written comments, are requesting a small change on our property. The vast majority of our property, our nature sanctuary that's open to the public, is covered in P zones. We support that. We like that high level of protection on our property, but there's a very small area around our care center that historically has had cages on it, was heavily impacted. That we were asking to have changed to a P zone to a C zone. We go into greater detail in our comments about why that is. But we hope you'll be able to make that change. We would just note here that we do support the highest level of protection on the vast majority of our property.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And I should make an apology to the prior speaker that I hope people will talk to staff if they have questions about their property, but if they have concerns still, we are the group that makes the recommending of this project. So we're the ones listening to you, which may go along with staff or may not. That'll be based on the testimony we hear in our deliberations. Let's go next to Josh Eckendem.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. My name is Josh Eckendem. I'm a homeowner that recently moved to Southwest Portland from Beaverton. My family supports the E-Zone project and the preservation of our natural resources more generally. However, looking at the map, about a quarter of our home and our entire yard is in the environmental conservation overlay. And my concern is that with these conservation protections, it's going to be unfathomable to create any outdoor living spaces for my growing family. So I want to go on record for requesting a site visit before another revision is made to the map. And I'll just simply determine if all of the yard area and the quarter of my home needs to be reclassified.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Next, we have Chris Gedrose. Are you there, Chris? Able to speak?
I already testified, but I'll do it again.
Oh, I'm sorry. I put it on my list. I think it's then Gary. Sorry, we're having some technical challenges. Oh, that sounds pretty good.
Can you go to Lori Rettenberg, please?
The next person I see on my list is Gary Schoenberg.
So Gary is signed in twice. He and Lori would like to go back to back, and I'm guessing some of the feedback issue is because you might be in proximity to each other. So I don't know if you're in the same house or.
We'll go on the same.
Understood. You're welcome to speak in either order. I only saw one name, but that's great to have you both. So either order would be great.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Rabbi Lori Rettenberg, and my husband, Rabbi Gary Schoenberg, and I live at 10701 Southwest 25th Avenue on a 5-acre piece of property where we've lived since 1990. We're very grateful for our home, our property, and our city. Our home has been even more than a home. It's been the center of our rabbinic work. We call it Gesher, which means bridge. Since 1990, we've welcomed over 800 sacred meals here and many activities. We love our neighborhood as well. We've welcomed hundreds of neighbors here for meals and music. We are environmentalists. We saved this land 30 years ago from a developer who had to clear cut it. In the early 90s, when the city proposed planting a third of our land in an EC zone, we did not object at all. We trusted that it would be an investment for years to come. Our work as rabbis for a small nonprofit has brought many rewards, but little income. Trusted that the sale of our Portland home would provide for our rent. This proposed EC zone remapping shatters our trust. Over 95% of our 5-acre property, even including parts of our living room, bedrooms, and other spaces, are aggressively proposed to be in the EC zone. This takes away nearly all of the value of our property and could even prevent us, if it stays, from remodeling to make our home a safe place for us in our old age.
4 years ago, looking ahead to our retirement, we began investing in a plan for a neighborhood-conscious and environmentally conscious subdivision that would provide 17 additional homes for our city. With the city's full support, we received preliminary plat approval for a development that creates an environmental tract, builds swales to protect streams throughout, and preserves 150 trees. It shouldn't have taken 3 years of costly staff delays. And now there is COVID. Our country's economy is in shambles. We face the serious possibility that this development in which we've invested so much may be delayed beyond our final plat expiration date. This proposed EC remapping would eliminate the possibility of any future development of our property. The value of our property would be decimated. As we explained in a letter to the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, this so-called mapping correction constitutes a taking of nearly the entire value of our property. It would leave us without the ability to provide for ourselves in retirement. We cannot understand why we weren't informed of this remapping plan even once during the 3 years of working with the city staff. We feel disappointment and betrayed by this. Don't get me wrong. We are all for the cities creating larger EC zones, but the burden should not fall disproportionately on any one family's shoulders. We urge you to postpone this project until the economy recovers from COVID and until there is a buy-in from voters to create funds to compensate property owners whose land is being taken. We plead with you, don't go through this remapping project without a plan for compensation at the fair market value. This plan, as it stands, is immoral, fiscally irresponsible, and unjust. We're talking about 5 acres.
Next, I have Bob Salinger.
I went once, but I can go again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You already testified, Eli.
Yep.
I have more to say.
I know. Everyone who has testified already is still shown as talking permitted. So there's Matan.
Yeah, look at the numbers going down the list. So we have Matan Swissa is next, and then Rachel Essig.
Okay, Matan Swissa, please. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, you're great. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just another property owner on Terwilliger that is joining other property owners with the main concern of I kind of feel that we are not as informed or educated about what is going to happen with our property values. So I think that maybe an important step would be to come up with a more informative plan that or maybe get tools from the city to maybe have a survey people come and explain to us more than just seeing a map online that is nice and intuitive, but explain to us more what are the consequences on us as property owners. I'm also a big supporter of protecting the E-zones, but it has to be more of a project that is explained to us as property owners, and we're part of this, and not just getting this as a fact that is something that's going to happen and affect our property. Thank you.
Thank you, Matan. Rachel Essig.
Hi, I'm Rachel Essig. I'm the Executive Director of Riverview Cemetery. We serve tens of thousands of residents in the Portland metropolitan area. We have been a long-time partner of the city, metro, the state, and county in the environment. We value the environment, which makes Riverview special and why our community chooses Riverview as a final resting place. This change impacts people's rights in cemeteries and feels rushed. Cemeteries rely on revenue to operate by selling interment rights and services. If thoughtful planning for cemeteries does not occur, then they cannot produce revenue to operate, fall into disrepair, and come into public ownership, much like metro cemeteries. The proposed changes impacts Riverview's ability to be a viable cemetery for the community and has an adverse impact to keep the cemetery open. The zone changes are based off a tree canopy. Riverview is an arboretum. This change encroaches on existing developed cemetery plots owned by residents of this community. We addressed this with BPS staff 3 times, twice in person, once in a formal letter. We received no response or ambivalent responses. We do not feel heard. We are imploring BPS to work with cemeteries so that the city does not become involved in the process of a family exercising their rights for final disposition. Planning for the dead of our community should resonate with BPS. The interment right inventory at Riverview and in our community is dwindling. The original E-zone boundaries took into account the developed areas of Riverview. The proposed changes will create a situation where the cemetery and family would need to go through a city process to exercise the rights of interment, something I don't think that the city wants to be involved in at all. Interment rights are a perpetual right of use. State law supersedes city changes. We look forward to BPS working with us on how to resolve this issue before the adoption of the E-zone changes. Otherwise, it'll be too late to address these changes. It makes us very, very nervous. And I speak not only for Riverview, but for the other cemeteries within the city limits of the city of Portland.
Thank you very much, Rachel. We'll go now to James Billingham. James, are you able to join us? Then I have Silas Beebe.
Hello, Silas Beebe here.
I'm here. This is James Billingham.
Okay, let's go to James Billingham and then to Silas next. Thanks. James?
Yes, I was trying to unmute and I guess the control was not available to me. I'm James Billingham. I'm supportive of this project. I would actually like it to move faster rather than slower. The reason I'm testifying is that the outcome of the project and its schedule could affect a planned development in my neighborhood. That development could be approved this fall to transform part of a key watershed in a suburban wildlife area. Now, it looks like an open field now, but it used to be a wetland. This particular part of the plan I will discuss is Arnold Creek SW21. It's on the lower left of your large map. It's on the boundary between Southwest Portland and Lake Oswego. It's slated to be completely transformed to become a commercial facility for assisted living. Right now, though, it's still a wetland watershed. It's part of the drainage area that flows into Paget Creek, which then flows into Tryon Creek. And it's on your overlay as an environmental protected zone. I walk past this field at least 6 days a week, and I personally observed over the years deer, ducks, rabbits, raccoons, skunks, coyotes, all crossing this land, grazing on it, or foraging. I've also seen hawks, owls, bats, flickers, all kinds of other birds that are on the land and the tall trees lining Boone's Ferry Road on that piece of property. These trees will be cut down if the planned development is approved. They're at least 50 feet high. At one time, I even spotted a female mallard duck and her ducklings swimming in a small temporary pond on that property. Except for the driest parts of the summer, the land has standing water and has wetland types of grasses. However, in the last 18 months, the owner has dramatically changed the land by scraping the grasses away, putting topsoil down, and then planting lawn grass over it. Despite these changes, there's still surface water and water very close to the surface of the land. And some of the wild grasses have also grown back. Even though it's private property in its current state, this land is integral to the surrounding land.
I'm going to have to ask us to move on. Do you have written testimony you can provide or have?
No.
Okay, feel free to provide additional material in writing through the website or contact us for how to submit that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much for speaking up. Yeah. Let's go to Silas Beebe. Are you able to chime in now?
Yeah, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
You're on. Thanks.
Okay, so the city is rezoning an industrial property at 2425 Northwest St. Helens Road next door, and I have two main concerns with this particular lot. First, the E-zone project missed two drainages in this lot that fit the city's own definition of a stream, and one of them has running water in it right now, even in late July. They're open channel, carry flowing water during some portion of the year, including storm water, at least 50 foot long with distinguishable bed and banks. So it has those features, and in my submitted written testimony of PDFs that show it, you can even see it clearly on topographic and land size susceptibility maps. And 5 neighbors have signed a declaration that they've seen the drainages and the running water currently visible from my neighbor's yard. So we'd just like to add those two EP zones to the lot. I think I'm all in support of the E-zone projects, and I'm thrilled to have a EP and EC zone next door. The second issue is the buffer overlay, which there was some confusion about it. And part of it is because when you go to the E-zone projects and you look at this site, you can see the proposed and existing zones. And proposing to remove the buffer overlay. And the concern about that buffer overlay is, do we want to remove the code and the protections it offers, or just the code? The neighbors fought this in 1991 because they were going to build a 24-hour truck stop directly adjacent to 11 family homes. And bullseye glass showed the risk of this kind of industrial activity adjacent to.
Also, I'm going to ask you to wrap up if you could.
So I submitted more written testimony on it. So
great, thank you.
Thank you
so much. Chris Peskin.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can, thanks.
Great. I'm testifying in opposition. The city needs to reconcile wildfire risks in Planning and Zoning Code 33.430 with generally accepted defensible space standards and modify the E-zones map changes to limit areas that are very close proximity to dwellings so properties may be managed for wildfire risk to protect life and property. The remapping in multiple instances extends the environmental zones to cover areas immediately adjacent to and abutting dwellings, including my own. Portland Fire and Rescue is mapped high in extreme wildfire risk in many of the same proposed E-zone overlay areas. But the Portland Bureau of Development Services' very own recommendations for mitigating wildfire risks is documented in a wildfire-resistant landscape planning document. Those recommendations are incongruent with the 33.430 restrictions. They close with generally the less vegetation that's directly adjacent to your home, the safer your home is from a wildfire. The above recommendations, when in an E-zone, are mired by required permitting and environmental review processes. The remapping project makes compliance with defensible space recommendations more difficult for the homeowner by placing E-zones in close proximity to surrounding homes. The development service document, if your property is in an environmental zone, check with planning and zoning. They say check with planning and zoning. Yet in 33.430, there's no reference to wildfire defensible space. No help. It's as if wildfire is not comprehended by the environmental zoning code at all. It's circular and bureaucratic. You need to fix it. Stop this proposal.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing Jeff's hand up. Is this one of those urgent questions, or is the hand left up from before?
That was 3 speakers ago, Eli.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm juggling a bit here, trying to time and.
But I will go ahead since I've got the floor, and I hope the woman from Riverview Cemetery is still listening. I just want to say, on behalf of bicyclists throughout the community, we really, really appreciate the way Riverview Cemetery has opened their doors, their gates, and allowed bicyclists to ride in that cemetery. It's a fantastic ride, and it's really a great.
Thank you, Jeff.
I know.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And we voluntarily participate in the city's transportation system. So it is private property, but we realize what a resource that is for people to access the West Side safely.
Just don't bike down it too fast, as I've experienced.
Exactly. Thank you.
So I'm going to go now to Louis Gronowski, and after Louis, there'll be Roma Barman and Matthew Miller. So Louis.
Hi, thanks. I'm going to avoid talking about my specific property. I'll send you all pictures and kind of what looks crazy to me as a property owner that would sort of all of a sudden become in an overlay. But it's asphalt and an entire workshop and a corner of my house, like everyone else that's here. But I did want to kind of just sort of talk about the big picture stuff. It was really great to hear everybody talk. I just want to sort of note to Mike's comment and I appreciate the work that Mindy and the whole team is doing, and I do support this project, but I do think we have to slow down. The technology that Mike said, it's there and the technology's there. No technology is perfect, and this technology is definitely not perfect, and that's why they have to do site visits. But from Mindy's quick update, it sounded to me like 70,000 properties were going to be impacted by this, and they've done 200 visits out of 70,000, and people just up here just got noticed. Like we all just, I'm sorry, I live up on sort of skyline above Barnes Cemetery, that area. right above the Audubon, actually is where my property is. So I get the importance of this project, but it is being rushed. We need to slow down. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I'm waiting on BDS to tell me property line adjustment for 10 weeks. They can't get me a permit. But I had a site visit happen from you guys in 24 hours, which is just crazy to me in terms of where our priorities are. I can't get straight answers on, will this impact? I think someone talked about, Jeff, maybe, I have to do a big project here to repair a septic system. Is this going to impact it? The answer from this team was maybe, probably, we're not sure, maybe, we don't know. Those are the kinds of things we need answers for, and we need time to do it. So let's keep exploring. Let's move forward. Let's get the zones. Let's take our time, because there's no time right now in the middle of a pandemic to do this. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm going to have to admit, was that Louis or Roma who just spoke there? The next person, I think that was...
I'm Roma.
You're Roma, thank you. So you're next,
Yes.
Roma.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me just fine?
Yes, thank you.
All right. I'm Roma Barman, and I live in Northwest Portland, and I want to speak about the buffer zone on Northwest 33rd Street, the same one that Silas Beebe spoke about. And livability in our Willamette Heights neighborhood here is really an important issue to all of us. We live within walking distance of both Forest Park and the Northwest Industrial area. And many of the homes are older and having been built before the industrial area existed. For the most part, the neighborhood and the industrial area have coexisted peacefully. We have a small buffer consisting of trees and other vegetation. One area of this buffer is below Northwest 33rd and Wilson Streets, leading to St. Helens Road. Northwest 33rd is a dead-end street. Without this buffer, it would be very unpleasant in terms of added noise, pollution, and possibly closer industrial activities, which would be very incompatible with our tranquil neighborhood. This issue was addressed and I thought resolved in the 1990s when the neighbors successfully prevented a 24-hour diesel truck fuel station from being built in that area. It took 3 years of hard work, my hard work among them, and attending many hearings to protect our neighborhood. It was addressed again in 2018, and I thought resolved again. Please do not undo an issue which has already been dealt with and resolved. I thank you, and I suggest that anybody who is making a decision about our area over here should visit the site. Any of the neighbors would be happy to give you a tour. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roma, and thanks for the invitation. We now have Matthew Miller, who will be followed by Louis Montgomery. So Matthew.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. I want to speak to the practical implications of living in a C zone and being switched to a P zone. We have a property that is about 6,000 square feet. 2,000 square feet of that is our house. Our entire property lies within the environmental overlay zone. We're one of the folks that potentially, if our house burned down, I don't know if we'll be able to rebuild it. We also have some issues with tree removals. There's some mechanisms in the law that if we have a tree that needs to be cut down because it has theoretically, if it has the potential to collapse and land on our property, we have to leave the tree dead in our property, and the trees on our property, one of them splitting in half, and it's about 100 feet tall. So under the current law, or the way that it's written up, we'd have to leave that 100-foot tall tree dead and dying in our 6,000 square foot property. Pretty sure our neighbors wouldn't be too happy about that, but there's just some practical implications of the way this rules are set up that make it very hard for some folks who are small property owners to actually maintain and live on their property.
Thank you, Matthew. Now we have Joyce Montgomery. Are you able to testify?
Can you hear me?
Yes, fantastic.
Oh, great. We've been told our property in Pleasant Valley is mistakenly included in this zoning change. We don't know if that statement is accurate. We were told last year in a project meeting about a change to the Pleasant Valley V overlay on our property. Now we receive this notice and see changes in base zoning to R20 and overlay zoning to all P. We tried to clarify, but had no response to calls on July 17th and 20th. We expected a call back within 5 days. The question and answer sessions were all filled, so no help. Why weren't we notified that the Pleasant Valley was dropped from this E-zone correction project, if it was, and why was it dropped? Our property is pasture for our horses and has been used as pasture since this area was first settled, making the entire property a disturbance area. We purchased this land zoned RF R7 in unincorporated Multnomah County. We do not reside in Portland, cannot vote in Portland, yet they now control our land use. We were never notified that Multnomah County had abdicated their responsibility for our zoning. When we built our home and barn, we went to Multnomah County for permits. Now that's not allowed. Looking at our property on maps, it's surrounded by open green spaces. These should be lovely, but not so, since they're overrun with weeds, blackberries, and Portland's homeless. We ask to be left in peace to continue our rural farming life without being strangled by land use restrictions that don't allow our current and historic legal uses and will destroy our property's value.
Thank you, Joyce.
And my husband also signed up, but I did not see his name on the list. Stephen Martin.
I will look for him when he comes up. We now have Les Blaze, and he'll be followed by Carl Sanden and John Gibbon. So Les, you're up.
How y'all doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Not good. I'm glad I got on here with the fairness and equality under the law. I live at 9630 Northwest Skyline Boulevard, Portland, Oregon, 97231.
I'm on live testimony. So, quiet's good. Thanks.
Am I still on?
You are on. I'm sorry. I interceded with something happening in my house. Please, I won't spend time yet.
Add that time on the end.
I did.
Okay, so I've been an advocate and a steward for Forest Park for half my life. I spent 25 years on the Friends of Forest Park. I've been on several committees dealing with Forest Park. I'm very passionate about saving it. I talked my neighbors in the original survey for the E-zones to let it go on their property, because the ones I'm talking about is like, I have like 15 acres. The people I'm talking about in my neighborhood have acreage bordering Forest Park. And I was all for protecting Forest Park, okay? But at the time, we went along with it because part of the Goal 5 ESG analysis is what the financial burden is going to be on the landowners. And we were told, because we have forest deferrals, it wasn't going to happen. And that's the way it went for years and years, 10 years, 15 years, okay? Then the county decided, Then the county said, we're going to take that away from you, okay? So what I'm asking for is that Goal 5 is exactly the same thing as the riparian and wildlife tax deferral. And if y'all want to—
I'm going to ask you to wrap up, Les.
Yeah, okay. If you want to continue to do this, then if you're going to take the property, then let us have, or request the city to let us have, the tax deferral.
I'm on.
Hey, Eli, you took my time. Now, the thing is that it's not on the house or anything. It's just on the property that we can't use. That's fair and that's equal. I'm for all this, but don't punish me for doing it. You're punishing me and other landowners for doing this. Now you're punishing me on the extra piece of property because it is a huge financial burden now.
Yes, thank you for your testimony. I did add the time to this testimony.
Remember,
next to Carl Zanden. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks, Carl.
Okay, my property is on Newberry Road. I want to make 2 points. First, the maps aren't accurate. The map of my and my neighboring properties includes areas that are not native forests. It shows slopes that aren't there, and they have other problems. This property has been clear-cut at least twice. People have lived there for a century. The lower third of my and adjacent properties have been historically disturbed with orchards, agricultural activities, houses, structures, driveways, and living activities for a century. The environmental zone was first erroneously laid over all of that. And while I see that it has been pulled back a bit with this proposal, it still covers large historical disturbance areas, including a cabin on my property that's been there for 100 years. The second item I want to talk about serious equity issues that are made worse by doing zoning this way. This area of Portland was brought into the city limits 40 years ago. Working and middle-class Oregonians were living there. The city has zoned much of it so that it can be divided into smaller parcels. Some years later, the environmental zone was added. With this came rules restricting to development to 5,000 square feet disturbance area per parcel, regardless of size. Sometimes later, the regulation for septic systems changed so that it is practically impossible to replace an existing septic system within the allowed disturbance area. So a working class family will pay more in fees and consultants to replace a septic system than the system itself costs, easily $50,000. So a family that wants to build an ADU or divide a parcel through a land division, perhaps to pass the land to their children, must pay a huge amount to planners, consultants, etc., in addition to large city fees. The practical result of this
I'm going to have to ask you to put the rest of it in writing to us if you have.
Your staff told me I had 2 minutes. I would like you all to give proper information about the public involvement processes you are giving us. We were told to be here at 4 o'clock and we were told we had 2 minutes.
I've seen the email that went to members that said 1.5 minutes. If someone...
Well, that's not what I was told when I asked. If you want the citizens to be on your side, then you need to have a public involvement process that feels fair and respectful, and this is not it.
Okay. Thank you for your concern there.
And this is another equity issue. You're excluding people who don't have the skills and the wherewithal to participate. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. We'll go now to, and I guess I'm going to volunteer that one of the reasons we do have the time is so we can let everyone who's waiting to speak have a chance to speak with us today. I'd like to invite now John Gibbon and then Stu Smucker. John?
Thank you, Chairman Spivak. My name is John Gibbon. I live at 9822 Southwest Quail Post Road in Southwest Portland. I want to say that I'm a strong proponent of the E-zone generally because it is critical in Southwest, especially in the Triron Creek drainage, to the functions of the urban upgrades that hopefully will soon be coming to our area. But I am very concerned over this effort in that it does not, as it now stands, adequately appreciate its impact on the already built environment for Southwest Portland. Delay is appropriate. I know it is in my homeowners association because the E-zone as it now stands, even without changes, has meant that we have been unable to convert a paved pathway in a C zone to a gravel path. B, we are unable to repair at a cost of $50,000 to $75,000 a private water supply line that crosses the E-zone at right angles and are now being forced into a potential city takeover of our private water system at a cost of $4 million. And finally, the zone that is being proposed, it's taking over an area of completely engineered rock channel as an E-zone, which was developed to create more buildable acreage on this site to get to the density we're at. So there are problems with what we've got. I'm glad you're waiting till December. I'd like to reserve an opportunity to submit additional testimony in writing. Thank you.
Have that. And we will reopen testimony for comment after staff has had a chance to make some requested site visits. So there will be further chance for that. Stu Smucker.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks.
Yes, my name is Stu Smucker. I own a residential property that abuts the industrial property at 2425 Northwest St. Helens Road, and I have 2 points. First point is that I am in favor of retaining the buffer that's overlay B on that industrial property. And the second point is I'm requesting that 2 additional unmapped streams drainages be added to the map for environmental overlay P. Regarding the first point, there's several reasons for retaining the buffer. One reason is that expert testimony supports retention. In 1989, Roger Redfern, a Portland geologist specializing in landslides for 20 years, conducted a site investigation of the property. Later that year, he testified that slope failures are almost certain to occur as a result of the development as proposed, and such failure could be a hazard to life and private property. His testimony is attached to my written submission. Second reason regards the base zone standards. In 1991, the city of Portland determined that the base zone standards do not provide adequate separation between this industrial property and the 11 neighboring residences. As a result, it placed the buffer on the property under Portland Zoning Code section 33.410.010. Third reason is that public testimony and a neighborhood petition support retention. In October 2017, as part of Portland's recommendation. I'm sorry?
We'll ask you to wrap up.
The second point is there are 2 additional streams that should be mapped and accorded to environmental protection. I included in my written submission a Google aerial photo that shows the location of both streams and drainages, and would request a site visit. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks for the invitation and the suggestions. We'll go now to Dominic Corrado.
Yes, thank you. Dominic Corrado, 6917 Southwest 49th Avenue in Southwest Portland. The nuts and bolts is that I bought this property, a 33,000 square foot parcel in 1991 before any overlays existed. In the last 25 years, my property's come under attack at least 5 times. Just 5 years ago, I completed a type 3 division with land use, with environmental review to create an additional lot. But this map project intends to claw back 1,500 square feet that I was awarded in that division after environmental review. That attests to the inaccuracy of this project. But I want to move on to right now the process with which this is being handled. For starters, Zoom is not an appropriate substitute for open public debate. This commission needs to hear up close and personal, with proper time allotted to each citizen, their concerns and a forum to express their anger and rage and distrust that this process engenders. This whole project is unnecessary. You've got new maps. Well, so what? Just as Jeff Bachrock said, what do you really need to do to comply with Goal 5? And again, as I mentioned before, the entire process is flawed. If I have not even enough time to make an opening statement after having suffered through an hour and a half of irrelevant testimony at the beginning of this meeting. I want to thank Jeff Bachrock for at least being the only voice on this commission that seems to have the citizens who are being affected by this truly in mind. The comments about fire hazard is true. The maps now show me in a landslide hazard zone, which I'm not, in a wetlands hazard zone, which I'm not, but it does show me in a wildfire hazard zone, which this is working at cross purposes against, forcing more and more canopy fire fuel into the mix.
Thank you for sharing, and thanks for expressing your frustration with the public process. We will discuss that before we do one of these again. Thank you. I'm going to go now to Darren Hahn. Or is that just Darren?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, my wife and I live on Caxton Lane in the Forest Heights area. And in general, we're supportive of the overlay zones to the extent that they're moved to more actually comply with the actual development of their neighborhoods. It looked originally like many of them were just haphazardly thrown, onto the neighborhoods especially where they're already built, and they included entire houses. In some of this, I see that those are being curved back, which is good. with respect to my property and a number of my neighbors' properties, we've had specific agreements with the city as to what can and can't be done. None of that is included in these overlays. So there needs to be obviously discussion, and to the extent we have a on-site meeting, we'll discuss that, but those need to be included. What I'm really concerned about is the wildfire issue here. I think, what we're seeing is many of these were trees that were planted when the houses were built. They grow larger and larger. And as they grow, okay, real quickly, we're setting up an Oakland style super conflagration of fire here if we don't create some buffer. And again, as these houses grow, as these trees grow closer and closer to the houses, we're setting up ugly.
And they shouldn't be.
Thank you, Darren. Now we have Harish Patel, and after Harish, we'll have Leslie Gross and Galina Danelli. I'm not sure how to say your name. So Harish, welcome.
I am a homeowner, and the description of the house or the area around me is totally wrong. It shows trees and shrubs, and it's nothing but some grass that dies up and weeds. So I did have the staff come and visit, which they did. I just want to make sure the record shows that it's just grass and weeds, because down the road, if there is maybe and should be and could be, I don't want it to look like there were trees and the decisions are based on that. I support this. I'm in agreement, but at the same time, I just want to go on record that there is nothing. There are no trees and no shrubs that shows on the map. And that's all I have to say. I just want to make sure the record is correct and the map is correct.
Right. Thank you, Harish.
Thank you.
Leslie.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, great, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Leslie Goss, no R. I was Leslie Gross in third grade. I think I've outgrown that now, I hope. I live on South Bremen Avenue in unincorporated Multnomah County. I want to first thank you guys for your service on the commission. You do varied and difficult work, and I thank you for your commitment to that work. I became aware of the E-Zone Mapping Correction Project in late November when the high school principal hosting an open house. She reached out to me to let me know about it and suggest I let neighbors in my Riverdale neighborhood know about it. I attended the open house, eventually figured out how to access the online map to look at my property, and subsequently request a site visit. We had a site visit in April 2002 at the time of the Portland Streams Initiative. And we had a site visit in February 2020 with my adjacent neighbors joining in. And I assure you, nothing at our properties has changed in the interim or since those site visits. Moving from a C-zone designation to a protection zone with a conservation zone designation, which involves much more of our property being impacted, and calling this a correction or not a policy change seems a little disingenuous. I question the value of the functions of the natural resource features being assigned by BPS and BES staff. For instance, my stream parallels a busy neighborhood road for hundreds of feet before meandering and forming the property line with my neighbors, and then it dumps into pools of Route 43. So I wonder why cars can drive on the road next to my stream, but I'm not allowed to engage in residential homeowner activities or improvements. We're going to hire a biologist to review volumes 2 and 3. And we look forward to working with BPS and BES staffs on our findings. And I look forward to testifying at your next hearing. Thank you so much for having an additional hearing. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Next, we have Galina. Is that how to pronounce your name? Galina Danelli? Let's see. Okay, if that's not working, jump in if you get able to log in a minute. Mark Wittig.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm a property owner at 3322 Southwest Evergreen Terrace, and I'm providing comments on behalf of myself and my neighbor at 3344 Southwest Evergreen Terrace. I provided a PowerPoint file with these written comments along with some supporting photographs and maps which demonstrate what I'm about to say. In summary, the P overlay zone that runs through my property encompasses the entire property of my neighbor doesn't really meet the values that define a P zone. We're at the top of the watershed, one street level down. The city developed the top level street on the watershed divide a number of years ago, and all that stormwater is collected into 2 stormwater pipes that run down the hill into the swale that is not defined as any kind of a stream by the USGS or any other map. So the only stormwater are these peak flows that run into this swale, and it's concentrated flow now, and it has caused excessive erosion. There are cut banks now several feet deep. Trees, large trees, several feet in diameter have been toppled. The erosion continues and is threatening neighbors in homes. So I'd like a site visit for the city to come out and look at the results of their damage to this so-called P zone and get it straightened out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Galina, were you able to jump on? Okay, we'll move on down to John Holmes. And after John, we'll have Stephen Griffith and Jamie Green, but John's next. Thanks. John, are you able to get your mic on? Okay, let's go to Stephen Griffith.
Yes, good afternoon. My family owns Riverview Abbey Mausoleum Company, which is located on Southwest Taylor's Ferry Road. We have been severely impacted by the overlays. Almost 100% of our land is covered by overlays in some form. The original Southwest Hills Resource Protection Plan, in my view, is a reasonable approach to land use planning in that it provided balance between housing and the need for environmental protection. We believe it's important to protect the environment. The current draft of the E-zone correction report has removed language that favors this balanced approach. We think this is wrong. My family has probably studied the impact of the overlays and the underlying land on our private land probably more than anyone in Portland, in my view. For the past 7 years, we've worked with experts to create various development proposals for our property. In the process, we've learned a lot about environmental overlays and city code. It's our firm conviction that the original overlays done in the 80s were improperly implemented. Draft documents in the E-zone map correction project still need correction today. The map on page 196 indicates that C-zones that have been improperly placed on areas of our property that is ranked as class 3. I also question wetland designations that are on some of the maps. We believe that the C-zone should be removed from 5 acres of our 12-acre R10 lot. We also object to the scenic overlays being placed on the property we own along Southwest Taylor's Ferry. There's no reason to add additional S-zones. Current S-zones are adequate and have been in place for decades. In addition, my family would like the city and or Metro to consider purchasing some of our land. We own a lot of the stream channel for Stevens Creek. In 2019, the voters approved a $475 million bond measure to be used in part for land acquisitions. We believe that you should seriously consider that acquisition.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Now, John, John Holmes, able to jump in? Okay, well, I'll move down to, if I know some people have been on a long time trying to testify. If you have a technology issue, I'll keep trying, but I'm going to, for now, move on to Jamie Green.
Hello, thank you. I wanted to first just mention that at the very beginning, the question of equity was brought up. How will this impact various communities? And I'd like to say that, and then the response that it's primarily white and wealthy was kind of hurtful. So I'd like to propose that we take a look at the lens of potential maybe ageism that's also going on. In that, I live in a home that I purchased 14 years ago, and I was aware of the environmental overlay, but I also put a lot of plans into it, and it's a part of my retirement. I put everything into it. Excuse me, I'm going to get emotional, but I don't have the kind of cash that's assumed that I can just rebound by you taking this property from me. This changes the value of my home. This changes my retirement, and I'm close to retirement. So there's a level of assumption that we can all just rebound, that we'll be okay. And that's just not the case. A lot of us have our equity tied in our homes, and that's it. So consider that. This program is not fair. It's not equitable. My neighbor below me, who is in her 80s, does not understand what's about to happen to her property, which is completely covered with rezoning. She doesn't understand how this is going to potentially impact her retirement. I'm also concerned about wildfire. We could have a Napa situation. We're not allowed to clear near our homes unless we jump through hoops, and it's certainly not close enough or far away, far enough to prevent that kind of fire hazard. I've been through a big fire. It's terrible. But anyways, please consider this, maybe grandfathering existing zoning and not impacting us even more.
Thank you, Jamie, for your testimony. We now have Tim Ray, who'll be followed by Lynn Fox and Tim Ramus. So Tim Ray.
Hi, thanks for letting me talk to you. I live in the Fox Creek Block 4 area. My testimony is a request to have additional information so landowners can make informed decisions on their property values, financial responsibilities, and options to what occurs with these zoning changes. I'm not in favor of the way the zoning has affected my property, and request that the original zoning remain as is. That's my testimony. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Lynn Fox?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Great, hi, everybody. John Holmes is my neighbor, and he just resolved his technology issues. So I'd like to ask that John follow me.
That's fine, we'll do that, thank you.
Okay, great. According to the city's definition of a stream, excuse me, the proposed P zone that's noted on the map for my property actually isn't accurate at all. And I strongly feel that it needs to be corrected. Your E-zone documents state that a stream is an open channel that carries flowing surface water during some portion of the year. However, the drainage way on my property is contained completely in an enclosed pipe for the first 44 feet. For more than 9 years, staff from the Portland Water Bureau, Bureau of Environmental Services, West Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation have consulted with me on issues related to erosion control and placement of the drainage way. Mark Woodug's also a neighbor, and he talked about the erosion issues. Mary Ladalgbo, I can't say her name, Ladalgbo, was out and assisted us with mitigation to the best of her ability at the terminus of this pipe. So all of these folks have documented the location of the pipe. Based on their documentation and the testimony I submitted, I'm requesting an adjustment to the E-zone to overlay map so that the majority of my home is correctly shown outside of the P-zone. Similar to Jamie, I'm in my 70s. My husband just was diagnosed with cancer, and I feel like my home is being taken from me.
Thank you, Lynn. Sorry for that news.
Yeah, it's not good.
Let's go to John now, and then after John, we'll give Galena a chance if she's able to get on. But John, please join us. Thank you. Crossing our fingers for technology. Seems like we might still have to do some troubleshooting there. Let's go to Tim Ramus. Is that how you pronounce your name?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much for conducting this hearing. Much appreciated. I'm a lawyer, and I represent a number of property owners who are affected by this proposal. I'll be brief. I just have a single question, and I hope some time will be left over so that the staff will be able to answer my question. But it's this, as sophisticated members of one of Oregon's most important planning bodies, you're no doubt aware that we live with a statutory prohibition that prevents us from adopting any rules or applying any rules to housing, which are discretionary. All the criteria that we apply to housing have to be clear and objective in order. So my question is, how are you making this project work under that statute? Because if you look at the criteria that apply in the package that you were asked to expand across the city, the criteria are all discretionary. They're some of the most discretionary criteria in our code. So the question is, how are you doing that?
Thank you for your testimony. I think I might have part of the answer to it, but I'm going to let staff jump in when the time comes.
Yeah, I would appreciate if they jump in now because we've been waiting quite a while.
Would staff like to chime in on that? There are a few more seconds left on this testimony. Although I will say that I believe that there's not a requirement that all housing be able to be done with clear and objective standards, but we can only use housing data with clear and objective standards to meet our housing needs required for our region. There are various parts of the city, such as historic districts, where there's no way to create housing.
There are two prohibitions. There are two exceptions. One is historic districts and the other is central cities and around certain commercial areas. Other than that, areas such as the West Hills would, of course, be applied, would be applicable under the statute.
I am going to respectfully ask staff to jump on that at the end of the presentation so we get a chance for people to testify, but it's a good question and we'll ask that. So I'm going to go down to Robert Griffith.
Yes, Robert.
Welcome.
Robert Griffith here. One of the owners of Riverview Abbey, my brother spoke previously. I apologize for the feedback. First, I placed testimony in the record and we request a site visit. We believe that our conservation zones were improperly placed on our property. We have 17 acres of residential land that surrounds Riverview Abbey on the south, west, and north, and 100% was placed in overlays. We request removal of the conservation property that does not have significant resources. That's our request. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. Karen Rathnow, is that how it's your name? Check here, my list.
This is Karen.
Karen, yes, welcome.
Hi. Well, I've tried to boil this down to what I can say in a minute and a half. It doesn't get at much of what I'd like to say, but it is nitty gritty.
Just wait a second.
We're at 1250 Englewood Drive. My husband and I, we're in our 70s. Our equity is in our land, like many of the people I've heard talking. The proposed E-zone, P-zone in our RF zone property is nearly a half acre in size. It overlays a man-made, pump-filtered, lined pond, as well as the recently installed pond plants and the engineered drainage swale placed around the pond. As proposed, the P zone, we have no overlays at this time, but as proposed, the P zone would have a very adverse impact on building just a single home on our 2-acre parcel and on the ability to maintain the parcel. The proposed wetland P zone overlays 170 feet of our lot's flag driveway, as well as dry, flat land south of this pond. We need flexibility in these key areas in order to maintain the existing flag driveway, extend the driveway to a garage, and extend the driveway to the west, south of the pond for maintenance that allows us to go between the barn and the pond. There is only a single 6,000 square foot location that is practical and desirable for development.
I'm asking to wrap up if you could, Karen.
This is due to view restrictions, neighborhood setbacks, approved drain fields, etc. The desired site is near the flag drive and existing barn and very close to the P-zone overlays. Most of our issues could be addressed by reducing the extent of the P-zone on the east and south by around 12 feet.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you to call that, and any additional comments, please provide in writing if you haven't already.
I have provided some of this nitty-gritty stuff in writing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Chris Robinson.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. I'm a homeowner, and I have actually had an opportunity to meet with some people on my property, and I felt that I got some pretty good guidance from them. But one of the things that I think might be helpful for a lot of people that I requested was if, when you are doing the mapping, if you could include the 25-foot, what is it, the transition zone line on the maps, that would make it clearer for people such as myself to know where that is, as opposed to trying to guesstimate from the maps that aren't necessarily to scale. So that was my one general concern I thought everybody would benefit from. And I do think, just a slight addition to this, but I have to admit, I do feel that it is kind of awkward having this conversation following the previous conversation. And I just think that for some people, it would be nice to have an opportunity to have this conversation by itself. So we're not competing with some me issues with we issues. So I just wanted to add that. And I think that really covers what I wanted to have you hear. So thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. And I've got Devin Holmes next. And I think Devin's the last person I have right now, unless, so I'll let.
Eli, there are a few people whose phone number showed up, whose names have. So let's go to Devin, and then I'll call the phone numbers to make sure we get everyone who's here.
Great. Thank you. Devin.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Awesome, thank you. My name's Devin Holmes. I live in Southwest Portland in the Bridal Mile neighborhood. My family and I purchased our property in 2019, taking into account the current E-zone and what drafts of the maps look like at the time. I would like to commend the E-zone team for the collaborative nature that we have experienced. We've had them out for one site visit. We have requested a second site visit. One of the things that we have had to deal with in our property is that we've had to remove almost a dozen old growth Western red cedars that were dead at a fairly significant personal cost. But we have also replaced those and replanted trees in the E-zone. Overall, I think the concept is sound. And what I would say is that I would fully support this project, assuming that the team continues to work in a collaborative manner to find a practical and flexible approach to this that balances individual owner property rights with preserving or expanding overlays on our properties. And so we look forward to working with Daniel from the team and resolving and finding a good balance. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Devin. And I will hand the mic over to Julie to call up the next folks.
Okay, great. So first off, let's double check if Galena or John Holmes is available and able to speak.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Great, John. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi. Sorry for the technical difficulties. You know, I'm a retired, well, I'm semi-retired architect. I'm actually a founder of Holst Architecture here in Portland. So been through a lot of these processes. And I live just next door to Mark who testified just a bit ago, and also down the street from Lynn Fox. And I'm really here on Lynn's behalf today, just to discuss just inaccuracies in the map, in the zoning map. It shows the new P zone literally under her house. And, you know, my understanding is that is trying to protect an existing creek or stream, which is actually really just a swale that collects stormwater drainage from above the site, and it's currently enclosed in a pipe that is running down that opens to the swale, probably 40 feet below her house. So it's one of those situations where I think we just need to get somebody up here to take another look. There have been people up, and it's still not accurate. So I did submit a few files that illustrate kind of what the existing conditions are, and I guess that's just what I'm trying to hear to reiterate for Lynn.
Thank you, John.
Okay, sorry for the technical difficulties. It would be, I think, just as a suggestion, if you could actually show visuals in this format. I think it would be, because, you know, words come in and they go out one ear and out the other. I think visuals actually help people understand what the situation really is. And I think, having been through many design review commission hearings and things like that, I really think this format as it is now, and I know we're all trying to figure it out with the Zoom thing, I just don't think it's that productive. Okay. It seems a little gratuitous in that sense.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I will say that, yeah, maybe there's a way to get visuals on here. We'll have to check with staff on it. We have in our written testimony, a whole bunch of people have submitted pictures of the property and things like that.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah, and I did submit a few things, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.
I don't really want to read out people's phone numbers, so I'm hoping to avoid having to do that.
Well, I know another way of doing that, Eli, because we don't have names attached.
Okay, I'm fine doing it. I'll read the last 4 of your phone number.
Yeah,
this is Kim Johnson.
Okay, great, Kim.
Hi, is this Logan Ramsey? I think I'm speaking now. You can go first.
Okay, so it's Logan Ramsey.
Hi, this is Logan Ramsey. 3026 Northwest Skyline Boulevard, Portland.
Help me with this, Mike. We want to talk about the expansion of the
in area. 2004.
Can you hear him okay?
I can hear Logan. Last 4 is 7878.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks very much.
In 2004, my family agreed to sell 103 acres next to Forest Park. In exchange, the city approved 7 building lots along Skyline Boulevard. We still have one of the lots. It has been for sale for 4 years. This new set of rules makes it almost already difficult set of rules, nearly, if not impossible, extremely difficult. Now they want to change the rules and make it even more difficult to sell our land. The city should honor its agreement and not change the rules again. And there's a number of people who are aware of the situation. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for bearing with our technology challenges to speak. I have someone ending 7155. Are you here? Okay, is there someone on the line who is ready to speak and has not spoken already? Just jump on in.
Hi, this is Kim Johnson.
Yes, Kim, welcome.
We have 2 properties that are being affected by the environmental overlay. We have had site visits. We are not happy with the results of the site visits. I think we're being discriminated against because we've kept our tree line. We like to have our trees in our backyard, but what's happening is our conservation area is coming all the way up to our house now. And so if we have any trees that go down, we have to keep that fire loading in the area, which is going to put our house at a fire risk. There's a big urban development, urban forest initiative to protect houses, at least a 35-foot zone from your home. And this is totally in conflict with that. We also have another property that is a lot that we're trying to sell or develop, and we have a very limited area. And because of the new conservation area, they're coming up closer to our property, which is making that be undevelopable. So we would like to provide written testimony. I wanted to know how long we have until we can submit more written testimony.
Okay, thank you, Kim. When we're done with testimony, I'll give a summary of what's happening going forward. Is there anyone else who's been trying to speak and has not yet had a chance? Okay, well, with that, I'd like to end oral testimony for today. We are going to continue this hearing to December 8th, 2020 at 12:30 p.m. in a virtual setting such as we are holding today's hearing. So there will be a further opportunity to speak with us. And we typically do allow 2 minutes per speaker. There were so many people testified today that we had to go to 1.5, but we will once again make that assessment when the next round of testimony comes, by which time there'll be a chance for staff to do some more site visits and perhaps work some things out outside of meeting. The written record will remain open until August 31st. So for those of you who had additional comments to share, the written testimony is open. The written record is open now and will continue to be open until August 31st, which is the same day that people need to request a site visit if you haven't already. The written record will reopen on November 17th in advance of the December 8th hearing. And all of this will be summarized on the project page on the website for the eZone project. So if you didn't catch this right now, take a look at the site and you'll get more details. I'd now like to give a chance for staff to answer any questions that came up that we flagged during the testimony. And we'll have a chance for a go-round of PSC members to get what you thought and any thoughts going forward. So I'll go to Mindy first, and then we can do a go-round.
Hi, were there specific a way that PSC members were flagging specific testimony, or should I just go ahead and jump in with a few responses?
I think jumping with a few responses off the bat, like there was a housing question and maybe there are a couple, okay. But we'll have time after that for the PSC members to chime in, and then you may have some further answers at that point.
Okay, I'll start with Tim Ramos's question regarding clear and objective standards for housing. Please take a look at 33.430.140, which are the general development standards for new structures within the environmental overlay zones. All sites are allowed a maximum disturbance area based on their base zoning, and there are clear and objective standards under there that must be met through that. So yes, we have clear and objective standards specific to housing, specific to the environmental overlay zones. I'd like to just refer back to the buffer, the B overlay zone. We are not proposing to remove or change the buffer overlay zone. It will just remain in place. We are not proposing any changes to that. I'm very sorry that the map app is confusing about that overlay, but we are not proposing changes to the buffer overlay zone. I did want to mention Riverview Cemetery. So, and I'd like to apologize to the lady who spoke that she did not receive our communication back. We have written an exemption that we are hoping that you will consider that allows interment into existing burial plots within both the conservation and protection overlay zones. So please consider that exemption to address specifically the concern that she brought up.
So that would be a potential amendment? Is that you?
No, it's already in the proposal. This was something she brought up at an open house with us. We discussed it and we've drafted code. And I'm very sorry if she did not see a response from us that showed that it pointed her to that exemption. So it's already in there, and we're hoping that you will consider that. Those were my big ones, and then I'll take any questions from PSC.
Okay, well, let's start off with a go-round of PSC members to take a minute, think about what we've heard, and share any comments or things you'd like to have staff work on between now and when we do this project again. So I'm seeing Kat's hand up. You want to start off?
Ready.
Yes.
So I guess one question I'd like staff to just answer for me is understanding of the conflicts between being in a fire hazard and how that adjacency to somebody's home kind of interrelates with each other. And then one is just more of a comment that I guess I'm looking to staff, as we've done on some other previous projects, and I'm hoping to hear that you're planning on doing it again, is that there's a cataloging of testimony per address what their concerns were and what the resolution, whether staff agrees with what their concerns were and that therefore there's been changes, and or, what staff's position is about it, so that we can kind of really hone in and track what's outstanding and take it from there.
Yeah. So first, yes, we're cataloging the testimony right now, along with all the phone calls and emails that we've received about feature mapping, which are not entered as testimony, but we will always consider and want to do site visits. And we'll be bringing all of that back to you at our future briefings, so that we can go through it with you. Regarding fire hazard, this has come up at a number of our open houses, and we've spoken with Fire Bureau and with the FireWise community. And right now, the best way to reduce fire hazard is to remove invasive species. So invasive species like blackberry and ivy are ladder fuels and very flammable. When you replace those with native vegetation, and our native vegetation is not very susceptible to wildfire, you're actually significantly reducing fire hazard. So that's the number one thing to do in natural areas. Our zoning code 33430 exempts removal of trees and tree branches within 10 feet of existing structures, and that's an exemption. There's no permitting requirement there's no requirement through the city to do environmental review. You do need to get a tree permit, however. That's a $35 tree permit to remove trees, even those within 10 feet of structures, but it's allowed, period. We can certainly look at other suggestions around how we could update the code to be more responsive to wildfire hazards, though, going forward.
Chris, and after Chris, Katie and Ben. Chris.
So I've got a few, and I don't necessarily expect answers to all these tonight. I'm happy to get a memo later on. So I'm interested, and I've been working some of these questions with Mindy all day long via email, so I appreciate her helping me refine them and make them a little more on point. Would really like to understand the nuts and bolts of the mapping process, particularly with regard to how much is purely based on the technology. The LiDAR says this, as opposed to where human judgment gets applied and how that comes together. So a general description of how that works would be helpful. The topic of EC analysis was brought up tonight, and I'm very interested in that because it seems to me that's the tool in state land use law that lets us evaluate the trade-offs between the environmental values and the economic values, and also the social values, which means it's a place where maybe we can get at some of the racial equity issues because EC includes a social analysis. So I'd like to understand where EC fits into this whole process, because my suspicion is we're doing it two courses a scale, and if we're applying a finer scale, it might give us some better answers to this process, but I hope staff will educate me on that. Similarly, would like to understand some of the history of why we're doing this legislatively rather than quasi-judicially, because that also provides other tools that might make some of these steps easier. Interested in the question of septic systems, and if you're required to remove your septic farm or field, do you have a way to do that within these regulations? Let's see. I know that on the system, if your entire property is put in the E zone, you still have the ability to build a structure, that there's a process for basically making sure you have a place where you can build a structure. I'm curious if you go through a land division, does that mean that you have that right within each of the separate parcels that you create, and how does the overlays apply to that? I could use a refresher on what our authority is over unincorporated Multnomah County. I know we do some planning on behalf of the county. I'm just curious where this all fits in that regime. And finally, I'm curious if we did any analysis on how this project may affect housing capacity overall. So I'll stop there. That's enough for right now. Thanks.
That'll be a long memo.
Yeah, we can absolutely reply back in writing as well. I do want to just quickly say on the ESCE, because this is something that is probably awfully confusing to people, and I completely understand that it would be. when we're doing this particular update, we are considering first and foremost compliance with Metro's Urban Growth Management Functional Plan Title 13, which is the Nature and Neighborhoods program, and it is in compliance with Goal 5, and it includes an ESCE analysis that local jurisdictions are allowed to rely upon when doing our work. And so we are following Metro's mapping protocols, their assessment of functionality, their ESCE, and confirming all of that information within our boundary, and then applying the ESCE decisions in a consistent way on the resources. And that applies to riparian corridors. Where there is a city-specific ESCE analysis is for the upland areas only. And so Metro's Title 13 had a decision not to apply protections to upland resources. However, they specifically said that local jurisdictions may not roll back protections to upland resources, and that local jurisdictions are allowed to rely solely on Goal 5 if we want to continue to change and update our upland resource protections. So it's a really confusing thing, and I can type it up more. It's also in volume 4 if you just want to read all the rules and regulations around it. Septic.
Well, on the EC point, before we leave that, so I understand we have a broad scale EC we can rely on in some cases. Do we have the option of doing a finer grained EC if we want to?
Yes, we could absolutely go ahead and do our own ESCE for the riparian areas. It's what we've done in the past. And so we do have that ability to do that, and we certainly can. But we will need to stay in compliance with Title 13 because Title 13 is in compliance with Goal 5. So we just have to be careful not to get ourselves out of compliance with those rules. But yes, we could do finer grained work.
Okay, that's a discussion I think we should have at some point.
Okay. Septic. This is a very good issue to bring up, and I want to explore this with the Bureau of Development Services more and come back with some additional recommendations. So I really say thank you to the testifiers and Chris for bringing that up. I think the rest of those, the other one I wanted to mention is the parcel one that you said. When somebody subdivides their property into parcels, is that standard allowed? Yes, it is allowed. The standard is used for every parcel. When a larger subdivision is done, all that's taken into consideration when the subdivision is done, and so each site is allotted their amount of development. And then for a subdivision, there's usually a tract that's put in over a stream or a wetland, and then the rest of the area just is opened up for development.
Okay, thank you. And I want to add a disclosure that came up in the testimony. I just want, for the sake of transparency, for people to know that I have enjoyed the hospitality of Rabbi Lori and Rabbi Gary at their home. It was completely unrelated to this project, but folks should know that I have some kind of connection. Thanks.
All right, let's go to Ben.
All right, I'll be brief as a lot of questions that I had have already been posed. I do have a question about the criteria about good tree canopy. There seems to be a little bit of confusion about that, if that's the only criteria that was applied in some of the cases. Another one in regards to, and we don't need to answer these all right away, about preliminary plat approval that was received for a property. It sounds like it took a while, and what happens in that case? Is that grandfathered in? And I think more broadly, it seems like there were quite a few people stating that they did not get direct or clear answers. And so I also support the idea or the notion of a tabulation of the testimony and how that's being addressed. And now that we have more time, I feel like that's the right way to go.
Yes, thank you. I agree. Criteria for tree canopy. So we are following the regional work that was done to adopt the regional inventory. And so we're following the same criteria related to mapping of vegetation and tree canopy. The science shows that trees within at least 300 feet of streams have a direct and significant impact on the quantity and quality of the resources within those streams. And so that's where, for riparian areas, we're looking at the tree canopy and preserving the tree canopy. It is all based on the canopy. The canopy is synonymous or a representation of the root zone underneath of the tree, where additional impacts from new development could harm the tree. And so that's where we would be limiting new development or requiring mitigation for impacts to the trees. And so, yeah, we do pick up the tree canopy in our mapping. There are a lot of exemptions. Like I was saying, 10 feet from structures, you can remove trees and tree branches. Dead, dying, and dangerous trees can be removed. So that is just important to know that we do have those when you're getting close to structures. Any permit that is applied for before this is approved is vested in the current code. So applied or received is vested in the current code. There are time limits for how long permits remain effective before their statute runs out. And so it's really important that people who have permits take a look at them and see when your time frame is where you need to have action on that permit.
Thank you. So we'll go now to Jeff and then Oriana, and then I've got a comment I'm going to read from Mike, who is listening in but has not been able to maintain internet connection to join us. And then I've got a couple also. So let's go to Jeff.
Okay. Thank you. And I agree pretty much with Chris's comments, by the way. But let me start with, a couple of quick questions, then I have an EC question as well. On tree canopy, was that considered a natural resource the last time we did a Goal 5 E-zone process?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. And then one other question, and this is the one I raised at the beginning, in response to the question about can I replace my house if it was burned down or I tear it down? And the answer was in most cases. Can you give a pretty detailed list of what the exceptions are when you would not be able to? And in layman's terms, I'm not asking for me. I can try to read the code, but I think that's an important answer to make clear for the public.
Right. So I will read you what the exemption is from.
I really don't want to. I mean, really, it'd be better to just have it in writing rather than begin to go over it tonight. So
okay, I would like to I just would like to be clear. Maintenance, repair, and replacement of existing structures and exterior improvements is exempt from the environmental code. There are no additional requirements for replacement of your structure based on the environmental code. However, if you're in a landslide hazard area or a floodplain, there may be other regulations that already exist on your property that would prevent or would limit replacement of structure. The environmental overlay zone simply exempts replacement of structure within its current footprint.
Okay. And again, I'm sure there's a lot of people who aren't listening. I just think it should be of record somewhere what the exceptions are.
Absolutely. We'll respond in writing.
Okay. The EC question Chris has raised. Just to be clear, what the EC requires under state law, you have to compare the economic, social, environmental, and energy consequences of your decision. So that if you're imposing the E-zone on a piece of property, you have to discuss and compare those. What would be the impacts without the overlay? What would be the impacts with the overlay? And compare, or without the overlay. So though we keep saying this isn't a policy decision, it really is a policy decision. Every time you apply an EC analysis, you're making judgments. I mean, it's not a clear and objective standard. It's compare and analyze and then decide yes or no on applying an E-zone. And my question is, I think certainly for any upland property we're looking at, there has to be a site-specific EC analysis. And I guess what I'd ask Mindy is, let's be clear on that point. If I'm correct, let's be clear. And if I'm not correct, let's have the city attorney say we do not need to do that. Because I think we have a very heavy burden here certainly for any upland. We have no choice but to do a Goal 5 EC analysis. And so
yes, you are correct. And that is included in volume 4 of the report. There is an ESE analysis for upland resources.
I glanced at that very briefly, but more importantly, I looked at letters from 6 or 7 attorneys who don't think it's good enough. I think it's, as Chris said, it's awfully coarse. It needs.
So we can certainly discuss that. It is the same level of ESEE analysis that we do for the scenic resources and the environmental resources. It is at the resource site level, not the site by site level. And so we can go into the detail about what may be missing from it that we need to include. I certainly welcome any recommendations about additional information that we feel is missing within that analysis.
Well, let me just give you an example of what I'm talking about. You've acknowledged for Riverview Cemetery that you want to give them an exemption. So obviously there was the equivalent of an EC analysis that says, aha, we do have some environmental impacts, but social economic factors led us to give an exemption. That equivalent needs to be done on every single upland property. I don't know if you've done it well enough. Certainly for any property owner that's objecting, there's going to need to be some clear findings for that property. And so when you put together the list Ben and Kat have asked you to do, I think there's got to be a box for, here's our EC analysis. And if it doesn't fit in the box, maybe there's an attachment, because I just think we're legally going to have problems if we don't do that. And I wonder about the level of EC analysis that's needed for riparian areas. And I'd like some clarity on both what our option is in terms of EC analysis for riparian areas, and also what our legal obligation is. And again, I saw this raised several times by attorneys. It may be something you want the city attorney to weigh on. And this is both an equity fairness issue for affected property owners, but it's also a legal issue. If we're going to go through all this work, let's not, and we know there's a lot of upset property owners and we know they're going to be represented. Let's not load this up with landmines that'll shoot it down on appeal. And the last 2 points, and I'll pass it on. 3 points. They're all quick. The first is someone testified about they're going to hire a biologist. Well, that's someone who obviously has enough resources, financial resources, and enough concern. Most property owners can't do that, which goes back to sort of what we've been talking about. I think we need to help property owners present their best case and not turn this into a argumentative process. Let's let the property owners help us make the right decision. And my second point was, and I'm not going to remember what it was, but I remember my third point. I thought it was the height of irony, and I'll let Mike respond to this when he can, that the Audubon Society is asking to have the EP zone scaled back on their property so that they can make what seems to me a reasonable and practical use of their land. Let's think about that in the context of other people who want to make reasonable and practical uses of their land, and try to recognize that. So we have a lot of work to do. And I remember my last point. I think we need to think very carefully before we impose the EC, EP on properties when they haven't had a chance to visually present their evidence, because a lot of their evidence is going to be, here's photographs of my property, or some kind of visual evidence that I don't know how we can fairly process if we can't look at it and ask questions about it. So we've got to at least December to figure that one out, but I hope we do, because that would be, to me, I don't think we can adopt this unless we can visually assess the evidence. So
can I just point out really quick that our plan is to bring back to you every single piece of testimony about the features in the overlay zones with a visual of the existing and any changes we make based on site visits or additional information brought forward by the property owner. So we will provide you a visual for all those properties.
Thank you. Oriana, you're on.
So I have a request for the next time that we meet on this issue. And given that it's in December, I think it gives us a lot of time to maybe address some of the issues I'm going to raise. And the first question is, how did you determine which site visits you did? I know in your report you named that, but it wasn't totally clear to me. Was it only because someone reached out? I know there was some specific like wetland related things, but how did you determine whose properties you were going to visit?
So we sent a postcard to all affected property owners at the beginning of this, asking them to invite us onto the property. We're not allowed to go without an invite from the property owners. We then followed up with the discussion draft with a letter to all property owners, again, asking them to request us to come onto the property to verify features. So whenever someone responded with a request, we've gone out onto the site. There have been a few larger properties that we have specifically worked with, who we've been in contact with all along, such as Riverview Cemetery and the Grotto and so forth. So there's been some additional work with some of the larger property owners.
Okay, my second question is, how did you think through who is more likely to respond to that? And I'm going to poke a little bit more just so it's clear what I'm getting at here. But for someone who is Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, getting a letter from the city that says, we want to come onto your property is a potential risk on a lot of levels. And I'm just wondering how you addressed outreach, because it feels like this outreach was done in a way that you are likely to get really white responses. And I think in terms of like the kinds of people who are going to come and testify in front of us, I'm worried we're not hearing from the property owners who are going to be impacted, who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color, who are lower income. And just, did you consider canvassing? Did you consider using community members to canvass? Like, how did you think through the demographics of who you were reaching and how to make sure that you weren't leaving out really key folks who have generational wealth issues if their property values are decreased?
Thank you. I really appreciate those comments. And I'll be quite candid. We had a really difficult time finding a way to do canvassing or reaching out through the communities. We have continued to have conversations since the beginning, trying to find the best way to sort of finger out through the communities to get people's attention and responses back. And we have really struggled finding folks within the community with an environmental or natural resources interest who have communicated back with us. I would really love suggestions on how we can better do our outreach like this so that we can help people who traditionally would be very threatened by those postcards and those letters and those requests. Because I really understand and respect what you're saying. And to be candid, we haven't had much response or opportunity to do things a different way here.
Yeah, I would love to sit down because I think what I'd really like to see at the next PSC meeting is like an equity analysis of this project. Who benefits, whose burden? When we say everyone benefits, that's always a little bit of a watchword for me. But really understanding kind of the value on the East Portland side and that little bit near the Grotto and Northeast. You know, what is the benefit versus the reduced property values, and not just doing a broad economic or social analysis, but really understanding like more granular community impacts, and then talking through the outreach. And depending on what resources are still available in the project, I would like to sit down and maybe help you brainstorm between now and December. Is there new outreach that can be done to really reach the folks who haven't been reached? And I think that's a conversation that at 7:42 at night, nobody wants to hear us have, but I would also like to make sure that conversation ends up on the public record in some way, because I've heard a lot of process concerns tonight, and I want to make sure that we're being really conscious and responsive, regardless of the privilege someone has, that we're using really good process and doing good organizing around a project. So thank you for your good work on this project so far. I know it's not easy to do outreach to this scale, and your willingness to think more creatively.
Thank you. So I'm going to read Mike's comment, and then I've got a couple, and then I see Steph also has her sign hands up. So from Mike, Mike has read all the written comments, and he has a few thoughts. 1, the letters were very thoughtful. 2, many to most comments were about their ability to make minor modifications, not opposition. 3, lots of questions about accuracy. 4, several want to expand environmental protection. 5, most said they appreciate the intent and goals of the project. The tone of written comments was far more measured and supportive of the project. As I said at the opening, this project benefits everyone in the city. It's consistent with the comp plan and many other city policies. And as Mindy said, Metro Title 13, which the city is obligated to implement. It's totally about addressing climate change. This is about protecting the city's natural green infrastructure. This is not a new policy. It truly is exactly what staff says it is, minor change to reflect on the ground reality. I appreciate Chris's comment, re the PSCE analysis. Staff has done a great job, frankly. 400 on-site visits, 179 written comments out of the 17,000 Measure 56 letters sent. Finally, he notes, we regulate what people can do with their property all the time. The number of units, height, and the list goes on and on. Those restrictions affect property values. Why is it not acceptable to do the same to protect the city's natural resources? And a note to Jeff, re-Audubon, staff is doing exactly what Jeff suggested. They are working with all people who've requested assistance in minor modifications. So I'll leave that hanging, and I will throw out a couple comments or questions. One of them is we had some, I've read almost all the written testimony. There's quite a bit of comment about trees extending over property lines and being treated as canopy. So I'd be curious what happens in that situation where you really can't control what the neighbor's done and it may be reflected in the zone. Perhaps a site visit addresses it. We also had one comment about forest management plan that may not be compatible. I think this was from Mark Morford. May have some conflicts between the zoning, and I don't know how that works. I'm not sure if that, so I have a question about that. There's also several testifiers in, not so much in the oral testimony, but in written testimony about fairness of treatment. If they're saying that the city is applying an overlay zone for them, why aren't they also applying the overlay zone to their neighbor or someone across the street who has a very similar situation? So I don't know if the city would make a map adjustments in that direction or how they would handle that on a site visit when the fairness issue is raised. Septic systems we've already talked about. And I'll make one other question is the free adjustment that people can apply for if they feel their boundary is incorrectly delineated. I just wondering whether, I assume that the free, it still takes staff time to process that, and adjustments usually get paid for by the applicant. I'm wondering if there's precedent for free adjustments elsewhere in the zoning code or in the fee structure, just to flag that as a potential equity issue. Because we've seen some projects in the past where we wonder, why don't we just let it apply for free? This is the first time I've actually seen it in the proposal. So I don't need to have responses for any of those now, unless you want to do a quick one. I'm happy to have it follow up later. Do you want to try one quick or do it all later? Mindy, I can't hear you yet. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I'll do a couple quick ones. The forestry use is an exempt use underneath the zoning code. So if you are proven to use your property for forestry uses, which is something you prove with the county, then you are exempt from the zoning code, the environmental zoning code on that. The corrections to official zoning maps is 33-855-070. Map error corrections. And this has to do with any map error correction. So it's anything at all. It's not specific to the environmental zones. However, the first option is to make a correction where the map line is intended to follow a topographic feature or does not do so. And the second is there's discrepancy between maps, and on balance, there is sufficient evidence of legislative intent where the overlay zone should be. In both of those cases, it is a free process with the city to do that work. Yeah, it takes staff time, but if there's an error, it's our fault, not the property owner's fault. So we correct those errors if we determine there is one.
Thank you. Steph.
Thank you. I mean, a number of mine, including fire issues, have been addressed. So thank you all, fellow commissioners. I wanted to follow up just related to, site visits and communications. Also in the time of COVID that we have learned, I briefly got to work with BPS on the Manufactured Dwelling Park project, which similarly to Oriana's point had communities who get a letter and assume that it's an eviction notice or something else that is going to imperil them in some way, and so we got to go out door by door to, as humans to be able to have those individual conversations. And, as obviously for COVID, and we heard this in the written testimony that, there were a few folks who wanted to do site visits, but were immunocompromised and did not feel comfortable having someone on their property. So that is one of the concerns. So I think looking at what are some of those, what is ECC learning? What is to the earlier conversation around community outreach in this moment? what are other bureaus doing, what is possible in terms of ensuring that we connect with impacted folks and specifically, BIPOC folks. Did I have anything else? And just generally, hearing that people did not feel whatever you send people, if there's sometimes a difference between what we send and what is received. And that's also exacerbated, I think, in this time when our approaches are limited. So I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Steph. Jeff, do you have a new comment? Is your hand still up?
Sorry, my hand's still up.
Okay.
No, I'm done. I mean, no. I meant to put it down. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. Are there any other comments or questions on this? Or last thoughts? Okay. Well, hearing none, I will close this portion of the E-Zone project. As I mentioned before, we'll continue this hearing to December 8th, 2020 at 12:30 p.m. And in between now and then, we got quite a bit of work to do. So thank you, everyone, for your patience. Thanks for joining us to the public. And I look forward to catching up next time. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.